Good morning. I think we're ready. Welcome to our Budget Committee. My name is Lene Palmisano, and I chair this committee. With me at the dais this morning is everyone, I think, or coming shortly, everyone. We have with us Mayor Jacob Frey, Council President Lisa Bender, Council Members Johnson, Ellison, Schrader, Cunningham, Fletcher, Jenkins, Reich, Cano, and Gordon. We are a quorum of this committee, and we're authorized to conduct today's business. As you know, we have been going through the budget process. That started last time officially through this committee with a daytime hearing that had 88 speakers at it this past Wednesday, so 2 nights ago. Yep. We had an evening hearing, the Truth in Taxation hearing. We are now ready to do what is essentially the council's markup in this meeting. There are a number of amendments that I have for my colleagues. They are numbered in packets from 1 to 21. There are some slight additions and substitutions, and for order's sake, we are making them things like 6A or 7B that I will call out for my colleagues so that we all have the right piece of paper in front of us. First, as is usual, we begin our budget with a technical amendments package. This technical amendments package has many reasons why we have to do technical amendments. One is that the world changes between when the mayor is able to give their budget announcement in August and now, here in December. Some of those changes are estimates that we had to make in the mayor's budget that now we have better, more accurate information on. Some of them might be small mistakes and errors from a budget book that is hundreds and hundreds of pages long. To go through those one by one, we have Director Intermill with us, who is going to run through that. That is at the beginning of this packet. After that, I have a chair's amendment that I'll be recognizing Mayor Frey for and others, and then we will commence with all of the other budget amendments in the order that we've felt was best to tell a narrative, to tell the story about how we want our budget to be read and how we understand it to be a statement of our values. So I will begin by inviting Director Intermill up to join us and start right in with our technical amendments package. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members, and Mayor Frey. I'm Micah Intermill, the city's budget director. And before I run through that technical set of amendments, if it's okay, I do just want to offer some thanks to the folks who made do the work all year to make this possible. So briefly, Mark Ruff and Lori Johnson, the leadership of the Finance and Property Services Department, the budget team itself, Amelia Kruver, Robert Harrison, Jane DeSenza, along with Jeff Muraguri, Brad Honnell, and Gina Powell. Our accounting staff led by our controller, Lyle Hodges, our debt and investments team, who also worked heavily on the capital portion of this year's budget, Mike Ablin, Jeff Metzen, every department head, all of the department finance staff, and all of the program managers that do the work that's funded through this budget truly are engaged in this process and should not be forgotten. I think you and your staff, it goes without saying, but it's very much worth saying, do a lot of work on this. And also the multitude of residents who have made their voice heard in this process. So it's a lot of work to get here, but I think we're all glad that we're here. To the technical amendment itself, I'll just briefly touch on what is included. Please do feel free to stop me if you have any questions. None of these amendments add to the levy impact. So A1 and A2 are merely incorporating council action that occurred after the mayor's budget release related to the plans for special service districts in 2020 that happened in the Transportation and Public Works Committee. Item B is incorporating a grant acceptance also that occurred after the mayor's budget release related to non-sworn FTEs that are grant funded in MPD. This is for the Community Navigator Program. Item lettered C, is incorporating changes related to the timing of debt issuance for the new office building that went through our Ways and Means Committee a few cycles ago. Item D is adjusting the debt service budgets just merely due to a better understanding of the timing and issuance of those debt issues and the interest rate environment. Item E is adjusting a grant in the city attorney's office to reflect the actual amount awarded as opposed to the anticipated amount. Item F is, I think, the most technical error, and that just relates to how the chart of accounts was mapped in our new budget system that we implemented this year. And item G is correcting for an error in project entry in the capital budget by the park board. So the Parks and Streets ordinance specifies a level of funding. $200,000 of net debt bond had been indicated in excess of the ordinance required amount. And so this moves that $200,000 of net debt bonds from that park board project to the First Precinct project, which reduces the cash funding for that item. At the top of this amendment, there's also a staff direction that's a belt and suspenders approach that if we missed anything, we will also clean that up, certainly to clarify or to effectuate council intent. Any questions on those technical items?
I'm not seeing any.
Great.
Does that complete your?
That completes the description of amendment number 1 in your packet. We also have a 1A. I'm not sure if you would like to vote on amendment 1 first before proceeding to that description.
1A being the financial policies?
That is correct.
No, I think let's do the financial policies as well.
So
I will move them together.
Madam Chair and members, item 1A, which is informally the technical amendment to the technical amendment, is to add in some changes to our financial policies. So Roman numeral 1 on this sheet was discussed in the Ways and Means Committee a few cycles ago. This provides finance officer authority to make minor changes to insurance requirements in coverage limits, defense and indemnification in contracts. These are, the goal of this is to sort of reduce and streamline much of the activity that falls to the Ways and Means Committee throughout the year. Roman numeral 2 is as we continually review our financial policies in the budget book, we always want to make sure that we're capturing everything. And we had found the city has a surplus property donation policy that was living outside of the budget book and those financial policies. So this is just referencing that so that as a transparency measure for the public.
Thank you. Are there any questions from my colleagues? I'm not seeing any in speaker management, but I hope you all help me with flags up as needed. I'm not seeing any, so I will move this entire package of technical amendments, including the financial policies, together as one motion. Is there any discussion on the motion as a whole? Without seeing any, we will do a voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Thank you. Next, we have a chair's amendment, and to do so, I'm going to recognize Mayor Frey.
Thank you, Madam Chair Palmisano. Voters place a time-honored trust in local officials that we will work together and we will deliver for the city. Today represents an extraordinary way of meeting those two expectations. My colleagues and I share a heart, share a mind in some of our core convictions. The people of Minneapolis deserve an accountable and transparent police department. We've recently shared a list of 25 unique items in further of that goal since our term began. Chief Madero Arredondo is up to handling these very pressing challenges. And yes, public safety goes beyond policing, and a sharp focus on prevention is essential. Over the last several weeks and months, it has been an honor to meet with residents throughout our city, and perhaps more so to work so closely with some of the council members up here with me today. Spearheaded by council members Cunningham, council member Fletcher, and council member Goodman, we've engineered a series of amendments that effectively make good on my promise to provide Chief Arredondo with more sworn officers through an added recruitment class. And this also marks an unprecedented commitment to violence prevention work in our city. And so I'm proud of this budget that has been built collaboratively and has a key focus on economic inclusion, a comprehensive approach to public safety, and yes, another historic investment in affordable housing. In fact, this is among my proudest days of mayor. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for answering the call to take these challenges with me. I'm grateful for your partnership, every single council member. Thank you, and I look forward to the work ahead.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to recognize the vice chair of this committee with me, Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano, and thank you, Mayor, for your collaboration on this. I think it is courageous to listen and to change your narrative in a way that I think is challenging, but I think you've incorporated the best ideas of this conversation in a way that let us move forward together and making the investment that you called for while also fixing some structural problems. We've made this more transparent now for the future so that we can have a better conversation in the future about the level of police staffing that we should have in this city by separating out the salaries for recruit class from the salaries for officers. We're solving some structural problems that will hopefully make it more reliable for our inspectors to plan in their precincts, for the work to happen. And so we're taking the investment that you offered in the budget and making it work better for our city, and I'm very proud of that collaboration. So thank you for the work, and thank you for offering this amendment.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I just want to thank Mayor Frey, as well as Council Members Fletcher and Goodman, for this collaborative effort so that we are investing in the full spectrum of public safety approaches. I've been a long-time advocate of the public health approach to public safety, which includes violence prevention and intervention, high-quality, accountable law enforcement, and supporting our neighbors who are coming back into our community after incarceration. Today's additional investments in violence prevention will continue to grow the capacity of the Office of Violence Prevention. As we will see in the subsequent amendments, we have increased technical assistance for our GVI program, which is in partnership with John Jay College, one of the country's top leaders in violence prevention strategies, as well as laying the groundwork for a comprehensive intervention program that addresses domestic violence and intimate partner violence, as well as fully funds the city's Violence Prevention Fund. The Violence Prevention Fund is of particular note because this is where the city is investing directly into community-led safety strategies. As a Northsider, I have heard time and time again and have lived it firsthand that we Northsiders are the best equipped to handle the challenges our community faces, and this includes in public safety. In tandem with community-level efforts in addressing public safety, and as we create off-ramps from the high demand for services from law enforcement that is outside their purview, like mental health and overdose calls, we need to have high-quality, accountable law enforcement. The amendment brought forward to create a new class of recruits is one step in moving us in that direction. I am also grateful for the additional funding to study the staffing and efficiency of MPD. This will help us to be able to remove the politics of the conversation and more objectively assess and invest in MPD. This set of amendments has been made through a lot of hard work from those of us involved, and I just want to reiterate my gratitude for my partners in this work. Today we are laying the groundwork for a more equitable investment in public safety strategies that is outside of policing, and is in parity with the investments we have historically seen in law enforcement. I look forward to us continuing this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Reich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know this is a budget hearing, but the comments that my colleagues made just reminded me that not everything is about the budget. The work that has been done informally with the first responders in the police department and the fire department and Jen White and Mayor Frey's office, without any budgetary mandate, are working diligently with educators and students themselves who have autism to understand better and directly how to engage in a particular community. They did not need a budget mandate to do it. They're just doing it because they were asked to do it by a community that said, we will partner with you. And of course, at some point, it might monetize itself into an actual budget item and an actual program, an actual project. But the inkling of that work came from the desire to do the right thing. And I hope that we can continue to do that and know that when the right thing emerges, we can have a budgetary response for it. And I just want to make sure that sometimes it's not about the dollars, it's about the intention. And I think what my colleagues have just shared, Fletcher and Cunningham, and I think the body itself and the mayor's office as well, is that we want to back our good intentions. And that's what we're going to do every budget. And I appreciate what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. This is technicality, but officially I'm going to move this motion from the mayor as the chair. Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you very much. This is quite a package. I'm trying to piece it all together, and it's just, I wonder if we could get a little bit of clarity, because I'm having trouble figuring out how much we're actually reducing the proposed increase to the police budget by. I see that there is some reductions, and then there's some backfilling, and there's some readjusting, so that we're going to be moving some money so we can train more of a cadet class. And I guess I want clarity mostly on two things. This will keep the full-time force at the same level it is now, and there will be some reduction if all these are approved in the police's increased budget. And how much are we actually reducing the police budget by? Not reducing it from today, but reducing the proposed increase by. If that makes sense. And I don't know if the authors want to just weigh in on those two kind of broad questions. And I know that's talking about a series of, it would include kind of that little package of amendments that we're looking at next.
Thank you. I also would like to read the chair's amendment first, and then did you have anything else you wanted to add? And then I will call on Director Intermill to talk about where we are at with this amendment in terms of the positive and negative. There are certainly others later in this packet that adjust that further. So we can call on Director Intermill again at the end to see.
That would be great. Then the folks listening at home might see how it might be a little complicated.
Yeah, I think that would be best. So this is a motion by the chair. This is the mayor's recommendation, and this and some of the subsequent motions represent a lot of hard work and a lot of compromise. So since the mayor can't move something within our budget process, I am moving it for him. And this is how it reads. Amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget in the general fund for the police department, reducing the investigations change item, including reducing the one-time general fund appropriation by $100 and the ongoing general fund appropriation by $319,000, and eliminating 3 proposed sworn FTEs. Eliminating the neighborhood outreach officers change item, including reducing one-time general fund appropriation by $428,000, reducing the ongoing general fund appropriation by $884,000, and eliminating 8 proposed sworn FTE. Eliminating the traffic unit change item, including reducing the one-time general fund appropriation by $206,706, reducing the ongoing general fund appropriation by $355,323, and eliminating 3 proposed sworn FTE. and increasing the one-time general fund appropriation by $735,000 and the ongoing general fund appropriation by $1,558,000 for a new additional recruit class and training investment change item. The police department shall use these funds to pay for academy class salaries and other costs related to the training of sworn officers to decrease staffing volatility in the number of active sworn officers. Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. So hopefully that reading clarifies the question on the FTEs and what the staffing change is. The amendments that follow.
Clarifies it to zero change from what it is today.
Correct. It's an investment in a recruit class. And the amendments that follow will add up to $540,000 of investment in a combination of violence prevention and accountability measures and study that'll be proposed by our colleagues as we move forward that I think offer a really good package that's responsive to many of the things that we've heard from community and from each other. So we'll offer those in a moment. Chief Arredondo, and I want to thank him for collaborating with us, identified money in MPD budget to participate in funding that, and that really reaffirms his commitment to violence prevention outside of or beyond MPD as a part of this work. And so approximately $250,000 of the $540,000 was identified from MPD sources.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano, and thanks to my colleagues for tackling and taking on this really challenging issue and hearing from community, hearing and balancing the pressures that we all have been undertaking. Kudos to Mayor Frey for collaborating, but I really wanted to take the opportunity to thank Chief Arredondo for participating and collaborating in this effort and really being an active partner in trying to, I think, address the concerns of his department, but as well as recognizing the concerns of the community and stepping up and being an active participant in this process. So I think we should be thankful to him as well.
Thank you. Director Intermill, was there anything else you wanted to add on this item, budgetarily speaking?
Madam Chair, no, I think that Councilmember Fletcher nailed it.
Thank you. I will say this, this is a pretty big compromise, and compromise, as I see it, is the only way to go. When we don't all come to the table ready to compromise, the public always loses. I think that this represents, this and the subsequent motions together represent a really important package. It is so much better than polarizing politics. I think we will each get some of what we wanted, and certainly, most certainly, not everything that we wanted. As Chief Arredondo always says to me, because I work on training in the police department a lot, training is the root of everything we do with public safety in terms of sworn officers. And it is an extremely appropriate place to always invest. Many of you have met and have had interfacing opportunities with Commander Katie Blackwell, who's currently the head of our training unit. Some of you have been to a lot of her forums as council members to speak directly with some of the staff that are, well, the sworn officers who are moving up and getting promoted today. And those are really important and meaningful conversations, and those will be ongoing. So this trades 14 FTEs for training investment in a future cadet class. Council Member Bender and then Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to speak to this, and then it sounds like we're all speaking, just to Councilmember Gordon's point, to a number of other amendments that haven't been brought yet, but will be coming later. So it might sound a little confusing because we're talking in such high level about a bigger package, plus we're talking in specific about this one motion. So I'll try to keep my comments first more general and then specific to this motion. First, I really want to thank my colleagues, council members Fletcher and Cunningham, for your leadership on this issue. You are in important leadership roles in the Public Safety Committee along with Chair Cano and with the Peace Committee along with Vice Chair Gordon. And there was so much interest in those two committees that I don't serve on either of them. I was very happy to make space for colleagues who really wanted to dig into that work. And I'm really, you're doing extraordinary work in those two committees, and I commend you for it. The kind of political skill and energy that it takes to negotiate a complex deal with many moving pieces and many points of view is really important in progressive governance. It takes time to develop, and it is the kind of leadership that I think over time leads to transformational change. It isn't the only way to show up and govern. We need people who are organizers, who are bringing bold ideas. We need all kinds of leadership, but the kind of leadership that it takes to bring forward compromise, I think, is an important way to bring forward transformational change. And that's what I think you are doing, not just through these amendments here, but as a bigger package of work that the two of you are so leading so much, along with so many other council members. I'm supporting this particular change because I think it is a more clear and transparent way of investing in our police department where the need lies. Councilmember Fletcher has voiced this really eloquently many times, but we've been talking about this issue for many years, going back to last term, just understanding that we have a huge retirement wave, not just in our police department, across our enterprise, but in particular departments, it's really leading to gaps in getting staff where they are supposed to be. So even though the City Council last year approved 888 sworn, we don't have that many officers on the streets today. We're well below that most of the time. We're projected to be well below that next year, no matter what we do today. And so I think investing in recruitment, not just in a one-time way, but this is ongoing money for additional recruit classes to fill those training gaps, is a good way to invest in our department to make sure that it's delivering its promise to the community, that we're actually able to get anywhere near that sworn that the City Council and Mayor have authorized. So I think this is a move that is good governance, that's more transparent, and that will help the department deliver better over time. As far as the overall package, I think it is significantly improved. I think from my perspective, I want to see violence prevention front and center in how we talk about community safety. Violence prevention is evidence-based. There are successful programs here in Minneapolis and all over the country that are showing results that are keeping our community members safe. And so violence prevention should not be an afterthought. It shouldn't be something we're scrounging around trying to find money from streetlights or other sources. It should be front and center as a priority in our commitment to our constituents to keep everyone safe in our community. So in the future, I think this sets us up well to build on the work of the Office of Violence Prevention that's supported by the police department, the city attorney's office. That really is an enterprise-wide commitment, as well as so many community partners who are really truly leading the work of community-based safety. I think in the future, this investment should be more significant. And so I commend, again, my colleagues and the mayor for being able to come to this agreement that allowed for a $500,000 increase in the violence prevention budget. But I also want to see us do more in the future.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else in queue, and I'm eager to get to the rest of the motions. So with that, I'll call a voice vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Item number 3 in your packets is an amendment being brought forward about the Office of Violence Prevention. Unlike in your packets, that motion is authored by Council Members Fletcher and Jenkins, and I will turn it over to Councilmember Fletcher to explain, read the motion, and move it forward.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. This is the first of 4 amendments that we've agreed to together, and I'm excited to offer this. This amends the 2020 Mayor's recommended budget for the police and health departments as follows. Amending the 2020 Mayor's recommended budget for the police department, eliminating the increase to records information unit change item, including reducing the ongoing appropriation by $93,750, reducing the one-time appropriation by $11,250, and reducing the proposed FTE by 1. Amending the 2020 Mayor's recommended budget for the police department, reducing the base budget by $37,000 one time. Amending the 2020 Mayor's recommended budget for the health department, increasing the ongoing appropriation by $105,000 and the one-time appropriation by $37,000 for a new Office of Violence Prevention change item. The Office of Violence Prevention shall report back to the Public Health, Environment, Civil Rights, and Engagement Committee on program funding outcomes annually. I'm really appreciative that we were able to work together to get this fully funded. This is an investment in community violence prevention that has really shown positive impacts, and that I expect to show even more positive impacts moving forward. And so I ask for your support for this move. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. I just want to state my gratitude to Councilmember Fletcher, as well as Councilmember Cano, and all of my colleagues, for again listening to the community and really stepping forward and addressing the concerns that have been brought forward to us, and creating more opportunities to grow our Office of Violence Prevention and the great work that's being done there. So thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I am excited and grateful for this investment because of the fact, as was stated, this is an investment in community-based strategies. Community members have experience in what the challenges are and what are the best ways to be able to truly get to the root of the challenges. This allows more flexibility for communities to be able to tailor interventions and prevention strategies that are most appropriate for our neighborhoods and their communities. And so this is an investment and demonstrating trust that community members know how to be able to address public safety challenges in our community. So I want to say that first piece. And then secondly, I just want to let my colleagues know that the allocation for in 2019, the Office of Violence Prevention will be reporting back on the work that was done this year in Q1 of next year to the Public Health, Environment, Civil Rights, and Engagement Committee. I will be sure to let folks know so that they can watch. We had some really great work that was done this year. One of the challenges with violence prevention is that you don't get a press conference when you save a life. You don't get a press conference when you talk somebody off the ledge of going out and committing violence. So that work can really go underappreciated. We have folks who are on standby at 3 o'clock in the morning. They're always available to folks who are struggling and who say yes to the kind of help that the Office of Violence Prevention offers. And so I really want to raise and praise that work because of the fact that they don't get press conferences whenever a life is saved, but we do get press conferences when violence does happen. And so I just want to make sure folks know that there is amazing work that is happening in violence prevention that is not constantly being talked about the same kind of way when there are large incidents of violence. So thank you to our Office of Violence Prevention under the leadership of Sasha Cotton, who is a phenomenal leader. We are so lucky as the city to have her leading up this work. She's currently in Ireland teaching about the work that we're doing here in Minneapolis. So thank you to my colleagues for supporting the Office of Violence Prevention and the community folks who are doing this work day in and day out without the glamour that comes along with doing this, when it comes to violence and the attention, the violence prevention work. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Council President Bender, followed by Mayor Frey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to note for my colleagues an amendment coming later that's related to this in the next amendment, which I've talked about with all the council members who are working on it. And it's just a small change to clarify that the funds that will be in the Office of Violence Prevention going forward will be available for citywide use. There's also an amendment coming that's specific to downtown safety strategies, but in the past, the council has put in ongoing funding included for specific areas of the city, and this will just clarify that the Office of Violence Prevention will be able to direct those resources citywide using their RFP processes, in coordination with the committee that they report to.
Thank you, Mayor Frey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I didn't get to comment to the entirety of the package previously, I wanted to do so now. In addition to the previous amendment adding officers through a new recruiting class, which I entirely support, I also support the series and package of amendments that are going forward for violence prevention. I'm very pleased with this result, and thank you all for your efforts and work on it.
Thank you for being part of all of these discussions. With that, I don't see anybody else in queue or with their flag up, so I'm going to move this for approval. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Item number 4 is about group violence intervention, and I will pass it to Councilmember Cunningham for this motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion before us is amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget for the police and health departments as follows. A, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget by reducing the one-time appropriation to the contingency fund by $70,000. B, amending it to reduce the base budget, the police base budget by $50,000 one time. C, amending the health department budget to reduce its base budget by $30,000, and amending the budget to include, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget for the health department to increase the one-time appropriation by $150,000 to the Office of Violence Prevention for the Group Violence Intervention Initiative. First, I'll go ahead and move approval of that item, but I will also speak to it briefly, if that's okay. For clarification, the Group Violence Intervention Program is an evidence-based strategy that was originated from John Jay College. Again, as I mentioned, they are a national leader in both violence prevention strategies as well as high-quality, accountable policing. We've worked with them from both angles. As one would imagine, the technical assistance that is provided to roll out programs with programmatic fidelity is not free. So this money is going towards the technical assistance that John Jay College provides us to be able to implement the group violence intervention citywide well. So I am grateful for their partnership and grateful for this investment, because what we are saying is that we need intentionality to be able to implement an evidence-based strategy well. It's not just about a one-time, we roll it out, we're good, we'll just figure it out as we go. This is an ongoing support for our Office of Violence Prevention to be able to build up its capacity to be able to do the work to the best of everyone's ability. We have really great work that's happening now, and we're continuing to scale up because now it's expanding to the south side, which we have multiple cultural communities represented there. And so we really need this additional support from John Jay College to ensure that we are doing that work well. So thank you, everyone, for hopefully supporting this amendment so that we can continue doing the work to the highest quality and with fidelity.
Thank you. Seeing no one else with their flag or in speaker management to speak to this item, I will move this for approval. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Next, we have a motion by Council Members Bender and Cunningham on intimate partner violence. I will call on the Council President to cue this up.
I'll defer to Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam President. So I'll go ahead and read it. So the motion is to amend the mayor's 2020 recommended budget for the police and health departments as follows. A, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget for the police department by reducing the one-time appropriation to the Community Navigators program by $50,000, and B, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget for the health department by increasing the one-time appropriation by $50,000 to the Office of Violence Prevention for Intimate Partner Violence Intervention Initiative. So again, first I just want to say that I feel like I've been a bit of a broken record screaming it from the rooftops that we have a domestic violence problem in the city, in every corner of the city. It is the one form of violence that we have seen continuously going up year after year after year. And we had serious tragedies over the Thanksgiving weekend that has caused a lot of trauma and harm in our communities. We can intervene in this violence. We can prevent this violence through whole family initiatives or whole family interventions. And what we're looking at, so John Jay College, in addition to the group violence intervention, they also have an intimate partner violence prevention program, which is a comprehensive approach that looks at not only supporting victims, but also children who witness the violence, as well as perpetrators, to be able to break the cycle of intergenerational violence. And what we know to be true is the research is very clear about it. Children who witness domestic violence grow up to become victims or perpetrators of domestic violence themselves, as well as out in the community. So as we see these numbers go up and up and up, we are truly sitting on a powder keg right now of future violence that we have the opportunity right now to be able to intervene. The Office of Violence Prevention, I just want folks to know, they are investing in therapy sessions for the 2-year-old who witnessed her mother be murdered by her father, and also the neighbors who witnessed the children on the south side being murdered. The Office of Violence Prevention has stepped into this space in a big way without being asked. And so what this investment does is it lays the foundation for us to be able to launch this program fully. They're not quite ready yet because of the fact that it takes time to roll out a program of this scale. And what we are doing now is we are investing in them to be able to do that. I am incredibly grateful because right now we have, I would say, I think less than $100,000 ongoing invested in domestic violence interventions. And it's one of our biggest issues. It is the #1 reason for 911 calls. So this is the first step that we need to take in increasing investments in domestic violence and intimate partner violence and family violence. It will help us break intergenerational cycles of violence. So there is both short-term and long-term returns on such investments. So I ask my colleagues to please support this and to please stay tuned as we begin the process of laying the foundation to roll out a comprehensive intervention program for this pervasive issue that we have in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham, for taking such a thoughtful approach to long-term investments in this work. I agree with what my colleague has said, that this is laying the groundwork for what I think will be significant investments in intimate partner violence in the future. I've supported investment in intimate partner violence every year since I took office. Last term, we were often cobbling together money with many of you, Madam Chair included, Councilmember Reich, just kind of trying to find the money wherever we could in the couch cushions. And this is a way to embed the work in the Office of Violence Prevention clearly and to be very clear that this particular type of violence is a special case that needs special attention and full investment. So I see this as a very important first step. It is another place where I think we need significantly more investment in the future. We were able last year, under the leadership again of Councilmember Fletcher and Cunningham, to turn money that had been added one time year after year into ongoing funds. So we're funding community-based organizations to support victims and perpetrators of domestic violence. And this is such a critically important piece of our overall effort to keep people safe in our community. It was Chief Arredondo who first told me that every single one of our top violent offenders on their in their history of interacting with the police department, the very first one for literally all of them is an interaction that included domestic violence in their home as a child, either with them as the victim of domestic violence or watching someone in their home experiencing violence. And we know, as Councilmember Cunningham said, that this is so deeply tied to intergenerational violence within the home and outside of the home. So we need to be supporting our families. We need to be investing in communities so that, in a hopeful way, one of the things I've been most proud of is that we are, I think, one of the only cities that is also supporting perpetrators of violence with good success rates and low recidivism. Again, giving people the resources that they need to be successful and breaking out of those cycles, which is often so difficult. I also did want to just pause and say that I wish we were doing more faster. Councilmember Cunningham mentioned the tragedies over the weekend, and they're just too many in our community. But Kirsten and her two boys who lost their lives, and Raven and her daughter who was there to see her mother be killed. And just pause and remember them as we look forward to the future in making an investment for them and all of the other victims and survivors of domestic violence.
Thank you. Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. I think it would be easy to view this as a reactive investment in light of recent tragedies that have been in the news, but I want to just name how long and consistently, particularly Councilmember Cunningham and Council President Bender have been working on this issue and raising this issue, and this is such an important thing for us to be doing, and it's a great example of one of the many ways that we are laying the groundwork for additional future investment in violence prevention, and that this violence prevention category of work in the city is going to grow and grow as we see the results and as we see the opportunities. And it is critical that we lay the groundwork and really set these programs up in the right way. And so I want to really appreciate the work of Councilmember Cunningham as chair of the Peace Committee and of everybody on the Peace Committee who are working to identify all of the different ways that we can make investments in those categories of work that can be impactful, that don't always make the headlines, but that we're setting up for the future a really significant shift in the way we do our work in the city towards community violence prevention strategies, and this is a great example of where we're doing that.
Thank you. Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm thrilled to be able to support this budget amendment and really just hope that this is absolutely the beginning of a long-term strategy, and that will include some of our other partners at the legislature, as well as other jurisdictions in Penn County. And we have to not only address the domestic violence issue, but the amount of guns in our culture and society as well. And so I see domestic violence, as we noted, is a public health issue as well as gun violence, and I want us to be always thinking about those issues in tandem as we move forward in this work.
Thank you. I'm going to move this item for approval. I'm not seeing any further questions. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Item number 6 in our packets is an amendment furthering efforts of the 911 work group that happened this year and about conducting a staffing study for MPD. It's authored by Councilmembers Ellison, Schrader, and Johnson. I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Ellison to explain and make this motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first off, I wanted to thank council members Schrader and Johnson for leaning into this work, and to council members Fletcher and Cunningham for all of their support in this work as well. I think it's important that there are a lot of questions about both 911 and MPD at a staffing level. And while we spend a lot of our time really zeroed in on sworn officers, I think that there are other questions to be asked. And so along with this amendment, I'm actually going to move a staff direction, and I would like to read the staff direction if that's okay.
Yes. Could you also first read the main part of the motion?
Yes. My apologies. Amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget for the city coordinator department as follows. A, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget for the city coordinator's office, eliminating the program evaluation change item, including reducing the one-time appropriation by $70,000. B, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget for the city coordinator's office, reducing the enterprise engagement change item, including reducing the one-time appropriation by $50,000. C, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget by reducing the one-time appropriation to the contingency fund by $30,000. And D, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget for the city coordinator's office, increasing the one-time appropriation by $200,000 for a new 911 MPD work group and MPD efficiency study change item. The city coordinator's office shall work with the emergency communications 911, the police department, and other departments as necessary to implement the data and analytics reconfigure priority system recommendation from the 911/MPD work group, continue the work of the 911 MPD work group, and contract for an efficiency study of the police department.
Thank you. And then the staff direction that you're adding to it is designated in members' packets by 6A, and I believe you're going to move them both together, right?
Yes.
Yep. So go ahead.
So, directing the city coordinator's office, along with the emergency communications, the police department, and other departments as necessary, to contract with one or more consultants to undertake an analysis of services and workload in order to evaluate the efficiency of the tax dollars invested in the Minneapolis Police Department, and further explore the recommendations from the 911/MPD work group, including but not limited to the reconfiguration of the priority system. The contract deliverables generally should include the following. 1, analyze the feasibility and potential implementation for the recommendations coming from the 911/MPD work group, including but not limited to how best to categorize calls for services. 2, analyze which services the enterprise already performs that the Minneapolis Police Department duplicates, and which of those duplications should and could be folded back into the enterprise, including but not limited to MPD's approach to records and information. And 3, analyze key factors that would contribute to a more efficient performance from MPD staff, both civilian and sworn officers, including but not limited to exploring whether squad cars should be staffed by 1 or 2 officers. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, I think this is really important work. And when we think about redundancies throughout the enterprise, I think I think we shouldn't just be narrowing in on sworn officers. I think we should really be taking a look at the enterprise as a whole. And this would be, I think, a holistic approach to figure out how are we more transparent, how are we getting information out the door, and how are we streamlining services so that we're not creating unnecessary duplications throughout the enterprise. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ellison moves this motion. Councilmember Gordon?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the motion and the staff direction on this. I think this is both critically important things. My one main concern is I don't see how this amount of money is actually going to help us accomplish those ends. I think that we need more. In fact, we heard that even one of the recommendations from the 911 task force, just to create a pilot program that we could test something, was closer to $500,000. So this will give us a chance to get a start on that. I also really appreciated that the chair called it a MPD staffing study. I think that's what we really need to dig into, and that's what I just want my intention of supporting this and pushing for this at the beginning and working with my colleagues on it was to get a staffing study, something that could be thorough and comprehensive and would be conducted by a trusted third party outside the city, trusted both by MPD and by council members and policymakers and by the community. But I think we really need that. We had a lot of discussions about staffing and numbers and officers and what they should do in the last several months. And I think if we can get a really clear, objective view of this from experts from the nation or somewhere who respond to RFP and can give us this information with real data, we can understand things a lot better. Just in that little bit of study, it became clearer and clearer that there could be a lot of things in the police department that are actually duplicating things that we're already providing. That we have a full HR department that could be serving them. Are they duplicating all of that? We have database and record staff that are doing it for all of our departments. Do the police department really have a staff of 12 that are doing all their records management and database, responses? Do we need that? I think what we're realizing is we kind of have a separate entity over there in the police department that functions all in and of itself, and I don't know that we necessarily need that in the modern world and having a modern city that wants to have professionals in all our departments. I think we can definitely look at that. So I'm very excited about this going forward. Concerned that we might not get all that we want out of it because we're trying to push so much into this relatively small amount of money, though. But I'll certainly be supporting it.
Thank you, Councilmember Schrader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Want to echo kind of a start up where Councilmember Gordon started. This really is the start, of really having a different conversation and more transparent view of our police department. I want to thank the other authors, but I also want to make it clear, like this seems to be a view shared by quite a large majority of the council that something has to change. We have to get real about how our police department is operating and make sure that money that's going into the police department translates into public safety in absolutely every single part of the city. I want to thank the mayor and because this is a very big deal to really make this change. I hope this study, as Councilmember Gordon pointed out, obviously we're going to have a lot more work to do, but this really is the beginning. We need to be talking about public safety and not just the number of cops. And this really gets us there, and I'm hopeful this will kind of continue on as our work goes on. Thanks.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm just glad we're bringing this forward today. This is really building on the work that the 911 work group has engaged in over the past several months, and we've really seen that they've just scratched the surface on this. We also have, and to Councilmember Gordon's point, a real need around a staffing study here. We have throughout the year seen different calls, whether it's nearly doubling the patrol force by adding 400 sworn officers, or whether it's reducing the number of officers and trying to shift those responses to civilian roles. And I think as everybody has kind of talked about their thoughts or positions, what we've been lacking in this is an objective outside study that really gets into the data and compares our department to other departments and looks at best practices. And so I'm really eager to see a report come back from a trusted third party where we can start talking about these issues from a common set of facts and best practices. So very excited to see this work coming forward. I appreciate all the support for this.
Thank you. I put myself in queue just because I wanted to offer some comments to what Councilmember Gordon said and then make a clarifying statement and make sure that's appropriate for the authors. It sounds like there's a lot of colleagues, myself included, who are really eager to delve into the details of what this might look like. Today, we're making space and just availing dollars to conduct an enterprise-wide study. Something I'd like included in this is how we look at park police. That's an active conversation amongst park commissioners. How we look to evolve our first responders in a new model, I think warrants looking at our city as a whole. And so with so many things and perhaps ambitious intentions of what we want to include in such a study, I want to note that in here it talks about this money being in the coordinator's office and the departments that it explains working with. I do want this to come back an RFP conversation at the Public Safety Committee, and if that's different than what the authors intended before any such RFP would go out, so we can hammer out what the goals are of this RFP. So in January or whenever, early next year, we really look to iron out the goals of the RFP so we're all on the same page and we don't get something back that we didn't expect. I'm seeing head nods, so I'm just going to note for the record that that is the intent, that this money would go to the coordinator's office, and the coordinator's office would help us walk through what the goals are of this study at the Public Safety Committee. That's all I have. Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple quick comments on this. First, I wanted to note that this is similar to work that the council is directing in other departments. I think another dynamic I hope we can move away from is the idea that if we ask any questions about the police department, its work or its budget, that we're somehow not supporting the department, which has $180 million annual investment approved by this body, or that we're somehow targeting that department. We recently undertook very similar work in the Regulatory Services Department under the leadership of Chair Goodman to reevaluate how we're doing all of our inspections, everything about how we're doing licensing, what those staff are doing in that department. So this is something that the council is doing overall across the enterprise to understand how public dollars are being spent, and especially in the context of us asking departments to do new work, understanding where there might be places where we can be honest that there's things that we don't want departments to be doing anymore, or shifting away, or just being very clear that we're not asking for always more and more and more, but rather a shift of priorities or change. And so I think this is really important work in this department, and then also in the context of the same view that we're taking across the enterprise. So I wanted to note that because I think it's important. I did also want to echo Councilmember Gordon's comments. I think the number of staff in the records division in MPD is actually 16 compared to 3 in the clerk's office, with the clerk still responsible for the work that's going through MPD as well as the entire rest of the city. And so I also think that we need to take a strong look at the resources we have in standalone resources across the city enterprise in specific departments, but MPD seems to really stand out as a place where we have a lot of staff in specific roles that have entire departments at the city or divisions within the city enterprise: HR, IT, records, request, responding, communications. And I really think that taking a look at that will help us better integrate the work of the police department into the enterprise. There's a lot of partnerships happening, but there's also a sense of, I think, that department really having so much of its own insular work that sometimes it's even hard for council members or the public to get information, which I would consider very basic information that should be publicly available. So I look forward to this work. I do want to be realistic about how long it's going to take to do a systematic analysis of the entire department's staffing, and I hope we don't set ourselves up to not want to make any changes or consider any changes until something like that happens. I don't know if that would be ready for the next budget proposal or not. I think we should continue to be asking these questions and challenge ourselves to look for efficiencies as we go along as well.
Thank you. So I will note that the RFP information that we should hammer out in January includes timeline. Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. I wanted to add a couple things to what my colleagues have said that I'm really supportive of. I think one of the things that people have noted, I was struck by. I got an email from a constituent yesterday that said, I really hope you're going to support the mayor's proposal for 14 new officers because I really want to see them in the streets this summer. We really need, and I was just thinking, whether people agree with him or disagree with him, he's not going to get that because where our staffing curve is, it takes longer to bring officers online. That we're actually projecting we're going to be fairly short-staffed this summer, and so the political conversation doesn't always align with where our staffing and our budgeting actually is, and so I think it's very, very important for all of our constituents, whatever they're advocating for, to have access to accurate information and clear information. And I think this adds a layer of accountability that we've been asking for. And so I'm really glad that we're all supporting this together. I think it's something that is really going to be helpful. I wanted to just say one more thing quick, which is to thank everybody who's participated in the 911 work group. I think that work is so critically important. I think in some ways the recommendations came back too late for us to do the work then to figure out how to really make the investments that we wanted to make this year. And they're laying the groundwork for some pretty significant recommendations and work that we can do next year and that we should be making sure that we start the conversation about very early so that we're laying the groundwork for future budget conversations. So I'm excited that work will continue. And I'm excited to work with everybody who's been taking their time and really doing a deep analysis of how we're responding, and are there more compassionate ways and more effective ways and more efficient ways that we can be responding to 911 calls. So appreciate that work, and I really appreciate this motion.
Councilmember Ellison, any last words?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to follow up on your comments or your question and ask, do you feel like you would want to amend this to add any language saying that staff should come back in January to develop scope of service? Okay, okay, cool. Other than that, I really want to appreciate everybody else's comments and just say that, no one who's in the enterprise now sort of created these redundancies, but I do feel like it's our responsibility to address them and to make decisions based on that. So thank everyone for their support, and I'm happy to move this.
Thank you. Councilmember Ellison moves item number 6, and then his staff direction before you, which is 6A. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Item number 7 pertains to our downtown public safety initiatives. The authors are Councilmembers Goodman, Fletcher, and Bender, and I'll turn this over to Councilmember Goodman for more.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The amendment you see in front of you is going back to a process we had in place about 3 years ago or so, which was a partnership with the DID, Public Safety Ambassadors, Mad Dads, and YouthLink's current staffing, but also some of the residents at YouthLink who are doing programming downtown, as well as a way to get people to think about programming as public safety. This would reinstate that program through a variety of sources and make it a permanent program, as well as an effort that Councilmember Fletcher has been working on in conjunction with the mayor and I with regard to downtown safety strategies, which would allow for the DID ambassadors to operate in the warehouse district late night. This would also be incorporated into this effort. This provides funding for all of those things, and I'm happy to defer to the other authors. I will note Councilmember Bender was particularly helpful in working with me in order to solve the funding problem, and Councilmember Fletcher from the very beginning has been on board reinstating this money from years past, as well as trying to figure out alternative safety strategies for DID ambassadors late night in the warehouse district.
Thank you.
I'll move approval.
Councilmember Goodman has moved approval of item number 7. Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. This is a really, for people who don't know and who don't participate in it, there are a lot of stakeholders who get very engaged in downtown safety, and there are a lot of different tables where everybody's working together, and it's pretty exciting and pretty inspiring. It's something that MPD and the Downtown Council and YouthLink and everybody working downtown, the Warehouse District Business Association, everybody who's got a stake in this work has really, and Mad Dads and everybody have come together and been really just trying to think about how do we make improvements to downtown. And this ongoing investment really reaffirms those partnerships in a way that I think is really important. And they work very closely with the Office of Violence Prevention. These are investments that in many ways are the same investments that the Office of Violence Prevention is making. They're investments in a lot of de-escalation strategies and alternative response strategies around downtown safety and outreach strategies, and a lot of that's very exciting. And then I'm really appreciative of the DID's piloting of late night ambassador program to see if we could make that work. That there are a lot of people who our only response to their needs last year was a police response. And if somebody is lost, overdid it a little at a bar, needs help getting to their hotel or getting a ride, that's something where we can have somebody else help, and we can provide a hospitality layer of approach that is going to take pressure off of everybody in a really positive way. And so I think I'm really appreciative that they tried it to see if it would work. We were able to test it in the fall to have something positive to invest in here, and so I'm really glad we're able to make that investment today.
Thank you. Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to make 2 quick comments. First, I mentioned this earlier, but this 7A amendment that Councilmember Fletcher and I will be bringing clarifies that, in part, this amendment, which takes new money and invests $267,000 more dollars in violence prevention is also helping us free up money for violence prevention outside of downtown in the rest of the city with the support of the 2 council members who represent downtown. So I think, downtown is a specific place with very different needs, but this is, taking that citywide approach, and I really appreciate their commitment to doing that. I also wanted to say at first I was a little skeptical about going through DID instead of the Office of Violence Prevention, but in talking with staff, I'm reassured that the partnership is really strong, and I think this piece is really critical, that the DID has been open to, and I think will continue to use similar contracting strategies as well as evaluation strategies. It's really important to OVP, the Office of Violence Prevention, to track their progress and to really ask any grantees to help us see how things are going so we can adjust in the future if needed. And so that I think is a really important piece of that partnership. I'm very supportive of this, and again, thank my colleagues for their collaboration in balancing needs downtown with the rest of the city.
Thank you. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just hoping to get clarification either from Mr. Intermill or the amendment authors to be able to understand how much money is going to what.
I'm going to turn that over to Director Intermill.
Yep. Madam Chair and Councilmember, good question. This one's a little bit tricky. So the in total, $267,000 will be going to Public Works ongoing for these downtown safety strategies. It's being funded by reducing the convention center, a change item in the convention center. It's titled Events Program Meet Minneapolis. A portion of that item was identified as being for mega events, and the intent as described during the budget deliberation process was to pool those resources over time and deploy them at a future date for a bid to get very large scale events here in the city. I think there was some question about that, and when the Meet Minneapolis contract was renewed earlier this year, that item was actually pulled out during Ways and Means. So this is using those funds. The second source is there's a change item in the Assessor's Department entitled Essential Operating Expenses. This pulls $39,000 from that source. And then the final source is related to the municipal. We have a levy for the Municipal Building Commission so that we can pay our rent in City Hall. We share costs of City Hall with the county. The county had increased their contribution by 1.5%. The mayor had recommended increasing the city's contribution by 3%. This just brings the city's contribution increase down to 1.5%, equal with the county.
Councilmember Cunningham, did you have another part of this question?
Yes, I just wanted to. I'm just trying to understand. So it's $267,000, and that's the money that is being moved right now.
Yes, and I'm going to call on Councilmember Goodman, who wants to explain it a different way.
I don't think Mike answered your question. You didn't ask where the money was coming from. You asked how it was being spent. So it's a contract that goes through the Public Works Department to the DID. The DID then has a group of union, organized, diverse public safety ambassadors, as well as people who do cleaning and people who do greening. And part of the money will go to contract for the existing DID ambassadors who operate with a union contract as organized by the city through its DID to do the late night work in addition to the work that they're doing, as well as contracting with other organizations. In the past, they've contracted with Mad Dads. They've also contracted through a really unique partnership with YouthLink, which actually put some of YouthLink's own clients out on the street to talk to other youth about what they were doing downtown at midnight past curfew, or how they can get connected to other services, or did they want to come back to YouthLink in order to do something, or could they play chess on the giant board on Hennepin Avenue? So that will be what the money goes towards, public safety ambassadors, as well as contracts with these other partners that are working to do crime and safety downtown. This was something that Mayor Hodges had in her budget for 2 different years, and then it was inadvertently left off the list for the past 2 years, and we've seen a big difference in the past 2 years not having these folks out there, and that's why we brought it back in an ongoing way, because it actually was successful.
Right. Thank you so much for that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I don't see anybody else needing to speak to this item. I'm going to move item number 7 for approval. Councilmember Goodman moves item number 7 for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Next, there is a motion that the council president referenced earlier, and it doesn't quite go with the previous one. It's more about something earlier, so I'm going to turn it over to the council president to explain 7A in your packets.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this should be a motion by Councilmember Bender and Fletcher, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget in the general fund for the health department, clarifying that all funds appropriated to the Office of Violence Prevention for violence prevention programming shall be available for use in all geographic areas of the city. And as I mentioned, the intention of creating this standalone fund for downtown is in part to free up money that is in the Office of Violence Prevention for citywide use. OVP uses an RFP process that's transparent and community-based, and seeks applications from all throughout the city. In the future, this wouldn't prevent them from using funding downtown, but it opens up, it removes any geographic restrictions that have been placed in previous budgets. And some of that money had been put in as ongoing funds for specific geographic areas of the city. So it's really just a clarification of the intention of this bigger package.
Thank you. Councilmember Fletcher, did you want to add anything? You are in the formal record listed as an author of this.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano, and thank you, Council President Bender, for working with me on this. So what this does, one of the ways that we had backfilled some of those services was by designating some of the OVP money last year for downtown, and the feedback that we got was that created some confusion among grantees who are trying to figure out, do I apply for the downtown pot of money or do we apply for a citywide program? My program's kind of citywide, or kind of focuses on a couple different neighborhoods, and so what this has the effect of doing is more than doubling the amount of money that community groups can apply for citywide from OVP by restoring this to a citywide pool. So I'm very excited to be able to move this as a part of that. Now that we've restored the downtown designated money through DID, we can open the rest of this up and make sure we're investing in the whole city.
Thank you. Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate this and the many efforts we've made to fund violence prevention efforts throughout the city and the package of amendments that we've been considering so far. I'm kind of feeling like this is the ending of that public safety package that started with the mayor's proposal to move money into that cadet class. So I just wanted to kind of clarify what I see that it's done in terms of how great a compromise this was. In 2018, we agreed that this year we would increase the police budget by $700,000 in our 5-year projection. The mayor came back and proposed that we actually should increase it by $8.5 million. Our compromise has led us to say, okay, I guess we'll just increase it by $8.25 million instead. So we're making all these other investments, but they aren't necessarily reducing this. And even when we do the funding into the cadet class, that's over $1.5 million of ongoing funds that will be there to do other things later. So we are actually just, I believe, increasing this department much more than any other department in terms of a percentage and maybe even in terms of actual dollars. And we should just be aware of that as we're moving forward. And this was great, and I really appreciate all the work of the police department. I appreciate the work of the mayor and all my colleagues on crafting out these compromises and moving it in this direction. But for a guy back in 2018 who was accepting $700,000, this doesn't feel like we moved it very far. And so I don't, in terms of a compromise that makes everybody happy, some of us are probably happier than others.
Councilmember Gordon, this is only in speaking right now to amendment number 7A, which is Councilmember Bender and Fletcher's assertion about funds being appropriated for Office of Violence Prevention being citywide, but I do appreciate why you got into queue now, because it seems like this is the end of that string of items. I do want to call, I believe Council President Bender has moved item number 7A for approval, and I will just note that this is simply a clarification that all funds appropriated to the Office of Violence Prevention for programming are available for use in all geographic areas of the city. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Next, and pushed into your packets here, is something that we have indicated as item 7B. These are not related. This is a next motion, and the authors are Ellison, Bender, and Gordon. I did not receive this until shortly before the meeting today, so I'll turn it over to the first author, Councilmember Ellison, to explain more.
And Madam Chair, I believe the clerk has the copies of this. I don't actually have one. Could we have those passed out?
Yeah, I was I was going to say the first copy, that I passed out had errors, and I apologize to my colleagues for that. So there should be an updated copy.
So we are having passed out and then available at the dais a new motion that you can begin speaking to.
Yes.
Thank you.
So first, I want to thank all my colleagues. Councilmember Fletcher especially, and Councilmember Cunningham, who kept me in the loop and up to date around about their investments that they planned on making into violence prevention, and I really appreciate those efforts. I want to say that the work of compromise is difficult work, and it's work that really needs to be respected and upheld, and I certainly respect that work. I also want to acknowledge, though, that I think that a lot of my colleagues worked on getting something done that they believed would pass, which is important, but I felt like I would not be doing my job well if I did not make an effort to propose something that I felt like was maybe just a little more just. And so that's what the motion in front of you is, and also just as a subjective viewpoint. So I'll read through and give my comments as I let my colleagues understand the amendment. So amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget in the general fund for Minneapolis Police Department, Health Department, and Coordinator's Office. 1, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget for the police department, reducing MPD training and staffing investment, ongoing appropriation from $1,558,000 to $1,408,000, and one-time appropriation from $735,000 to $385,000. 2, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget for the health department, increasing the one-time appropriation by $100,000 for opioid intervention change item. The mayor's multi-jurisdictional task force on opioids presented 18 recommendations, each of which would have multiple steps. This could go towards youth prevention programs and cultural communities. It is a high need and was requested in the budget, but was not able to be included. I think staff have identified existing models in Philadelphia that they could replicate and adapt to our communities here in Minneapolis. 3, amending the mayor's 2020 budget for the Health Department Office of Violence Prevention, adding $50,000 ongoing appropriation for the Blueprint Approved Institute and one-time appropriation of $150,000 for street outreach and $100,000 for inspiring youth. I'll just make a note to say that the Blueprint Approved Institute is recognized as a nationwide model practice by the National Association of County and City Health Officials. This funding would allow the program to expand, creating opportunity for nonprofits who have graduated from the program to work together on shared collaborative violence prevention strategies. OVP street outreach workers is a key component missing from Minneapolis's OVP office compared to other offices like it across the country. And I think that work could be expanded. Expiring Youth is a voluntary program for youth that are demonstrating likelihood for violence. We talk a lot about quality youth development, and I think that's this investment could go a long way towards that. And 4, amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget for the Health Department Office of Violence Prevention, increasing the ongoing appropriation of $100,000 for 1 FTE to support GVI and intimate partner violence. I'll just add that this additional staff person would support GVI and IPV work, including the work that is coming from the other amendments so far today. So I'll move that forward and accept any questions or comments from my colleagues. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Councilmember Gordon.
Well, I'm feeling a little better. I appreciate that the efforts, and these were things that certainly were talked about with others as we were working on other issues, and clearly there are investments that I think that would really benefit the city. And we know that the opioid epidemic and the crisis is not only hurting our residents, hurting our communities, but it's also sapping a lot of resources from the city in other areas, including from the police department. So I appreciate that. We've already heard today about the concerns about domestic violence and other efforts to prevent violence, and how wonderful our violence prevention efforts are going. So I think these are appropriate things, and I think it's even rather modest. Even with these changes, that's only reducing the increase by another $500,000, I believe, which sounds like a whole lot of money, but it still keeps us far, far away from that $700,000 we agreed to a year ago, and will still give the department a substantial bump up of $7,750,000, so the police department's able to continue doing the work, and some of the things that we wanted apparently think it needs an increase to do, that will be substantial. So I think it's a small step, recognizing that getting us all feeling good about the budget is something that's worthwhile, not just because of our feelings, but because we represent the people of Minneapolis who want a budget that is also just. And we're up here as elected officials because we represent them and give them voice and are bringing their opinions to the table here. And we certainly have been hearing a lot of opinions about this. The first public hearing was significant to me in the amount of people that were asking us to do more and to do more alternatives than the traditional police alternatives. I attended a forum yesterday that was sponsored by the Humphrey Institute group. I'm worried I'll mess up their name, but essentially the people of color, Black Caucus of the Humphrey Institute graduates had a program that was looking about what could we do to unarm the police department at the university, and they were looking at it, and I heard students talking about how this is a discussion they never thought they'd have about, could we survive without a police department, and could we have our police not carry weapons, and what would that look like? And I think we're at a pivotal point in our city's history right now where we are trying to rethink and understand anew how to do public safety. And people are recognizing across this city, including, I'll say, Ward 2 constituents who are on safety committees who came up at the public hearing and spoke, and they weren't speaking like they would have 10 years ago about we need more police. Why don't we have more police on our streets? They were talking about we need to do alternatives. We need to figure this problem out. Solving crimes and preventing crimes and having peace in our city is bigger than the police department. So the whole community and the whole city is having this discussion, and we need to be part of it, and we need to keep turning this and figuring out where the right place is. We have a great opportunity here because of the support from the public, and because we have our residents and our businesses willing to engage in these uncomfortable discussions about thinking about something differently than they have before to really make progress and really move things forward. And I know we're having a little struggle, reflecting the struggle in our community up here on the City Council right now, and I just ask you to think about bending a little bit further with this $500,000 and reducing the increase, this modest amount, so we can help build up the alternatives and test out some of these new ideas that we're getting from our opioid task force, our 911 task force, and other people who are saying we can do other things to reduce harms, to prevent crimes that are more compassionate and more people-oriented. So I hope my friends on the fence will consider supporting this. I know it's a big stretch for some of us.
Yes, I'll agree this is a big stretch for some of us. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, let's see. I have a number of things to say. I want to say them in an order that makes sense. First of all, I know a number of my colleagues are just seeing this for the first time. I wasn't able to see the amendment that was circulated last night at, I think, about 7 o'clock until 9 o'clock. So this is, was a response to that one that most of us didn't see until late last night. So apologies for folks who are just seeing this now. And I think of this as really an invitation to continue to engage in the budget between now and our final actions. We have another public hearing coming up. And so if there are questions from council members, or folks think these numbers aren't quite right, or there's different uses that people are interested in investing in, I think myself and the other authors of this amendment are very open to that, but we wanted to bring this forward today in the interest of transparency, so that we weren't springing it on people after the public hearing had happened on Wednesday. I'm one of the council members who thinks the investment in violence prevention so far after the previous amendment is better than it was, but still not enough. I'm willing for these numbers to be corrected if they aren't correct, but I believe that the overall general fund in the mayor's proposed budget increased 3.5%, while the increase in the police department's budget was 4.6%, and the original proposal was to cut the Office of Violence Prevention funding by 7%. The amendment that passed earlier, the package of changes that came forward, corrects that, increasing the Office of Violence Prevention funding by 8%, which is a great move forward that I strongly support. And again, thank so much the leadership of council members Fletcher and Cunningham in that. And this motion would go farther, bringing us to a place where we're able to make some more meaningful investments in the things that Councilmember Ellison described. I think this is, regardless of it passes today or on Wednesday, I think this is a little bit of a roadmap of where we're going with violence prevention in the future, expanding some things that staff already has underway, giving more resources to new work, like implementing the mayor's opioid task force by giving that more funding, and in particular allowing for the FTE that is really required for the intimate partner violence work to be successful going forward. So if this doesn't happen this year, I just want to be clear and transparent that it is very likely going to be postponing our ability to provide outcomes and resources in this important work in violence prevention and intimate partner violence. I think we're setting the stage, and that for a lot of great work, as many people have described, but that we could still do more this year, and that would lead to better outcomes more quickly. Realistically, it takes several months to hire staff, sometimes up to 6 months. It takes time to put together task forces and to do staffing reviews, and we have things now that we could fund that would make a difference in people's lives. So I would encourage my colleagues to support this. I understand if folks can't at this time. I'll note that the most difficult vote I've ever taken as a council member was when I was playing a role in our minimum wage discussions that led me to vote against putting the minimum wage on the ballot, even though I so very strongly supported raising the minimum wage. And I did that because I worked with my colleagues to bring forward a staff direction to start the process of bringing forward the ordinance that eventually passed to allow for us to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So sometimes we play different roles, and in this case, council members Fletcher and Cunningham have played the role of negotiating an agreement that got us a $500,000 extra increase in violence prevention, and I really thank you for that. And I just want to keep saying that because I think it's so important as we think about the context of the other votes that we'll be taking.
Councilmember Ellison.
I just wanted to reiterate for my colleagues and for the public that this proposal does not eliminate any change item from MPD's budget. It does reduce one. It's my current understanding that the proposed cadet class is going to be nearly double the typical size of a cadet class, and so I think that by reducing this amount, it would bring us. It would be so that the cadet class proposed would be, I think, a more comparable size to other cadet classes, but it does not eliminate that item. And I also wanted to say that I know that a lot of my colleagues are probably sitting up here, making their own determinations as they read through the policy, as they read through the amendment. And because this is probably going to be our first split decision on the council, I would ask the chair that we do a roll call vote so that we're not, too confused up here. So I would, make that request to the chair. And I know there are other comments, so thank you.
I will note your request. Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. And thank you to my colleagues for bringing this forward. There is certainly a part of me that wants to be able to vote yes on this, but I think my approach, as Council President Bender noted, was to get to a compromise and to get to a place that we felt confident we could all look each other in the eye and say, these are things that we know we can support. I don't feel like I can, with what I know right now, say that we can reduce the recruit class, given that we're projecting to be very low relative to the staffing that we've previously approved in June, and that we're digging our way out of a deficit right now. And so for me, I'm not in a place that I can vote yes on this right now, but I share the sentiment that we need to do more, and I think we've done a lot to lay the groundwork for doing more next year. For doing more in the future. And so my no vote today is not a rejection of the spirit or the premise of what you're offering, but it's a commitment to a set of agreements and a collaboration that we've done to move this forward in a way that I feel that feels responsible to me. And so I wanted to explain my vote to everyone and appreciate the motion that you brought forward. We will work more on this together next year.
Thank you. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also just want to say first off that I will not be supporting this amendment today, given the role that I played in negotiations to be able to reach the compromise that we've reached. This is not an easy vote for me to take, given that I have been the most vocal champion for violence prevention and led the creation of the Office of Violence Prevention. Much the same as my colleague, Councilmember Fletcher, I strongly support the underlying intention of this amendment, and also the Office of Violence Prevention is not prepared to undertake the Intimate Partner Violence Prevention Program yet, which is why we have the $50,000 invested in laying the foundation for the work so that it can be implemented with programmatic fidelity and with strength. I think we have a different policy question around street outreach work, because that currently lives in the Youth Coordinating Board. And so we need to have if folks feel that work is more appropriately, it should be more appropriately placed in the Office of Violence Prevention, that is a policy question that we first have to answer. And I also do just want to name that we do have money in the budget to launch a new program that was a recommendation from the mayor's opioid task force, which is a similar bedside intervention program for opioid overdose. And the next step is a gun violence and a gun violence bedside intervention. So we do have some work here. There is a lot, we have a long way still to go. We have laid the groundwork here today to continue to build the capacity of the Office of Violence Prevention to take on this work. When we roll out evidence-based strategies, it takes time, and I know that we have an urgent issue. Trust me, I know we have urgent issues. And we also have to make sure that we have the capacity in place to be able to do the work, which we're currently not there yet. So, and I also just want to be clear that as the champion for violence prevention and the Office of Violence Prevention, that I will be advocating and I will be very vocally in support for many of these investments next year, as once we have all of this work aligned and ready to launch at full scale. And so I just wanted to be able to explain this likely will be the hardest vote that I have to take, but just wanted to explain why.
Councilmember Kano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the authors bringing this forward, and I think it really sets the tone for the type of work that we want to continue to do together. And all of us have been working in various forums and in various coalitions throughout the last couple of months to figure out what these reduction in crime and improvements in public safety are going to be. I'm not going to be able to support this amendment today, and part of it is, of course, the timing. It was just presented to me a few minutes ago. I like to be able to shape things and participate things in a more meaningful way to ensure that the resources are allocated in an effective way for the communities of the Ninth Ward. And it doesn't mean that I'm not open to solving these issues and interested in the spirit of the motion. I think that it's very positive that we're all talking about the same things and trying to address some of these root causes. And I'm hoping that we can all start talking about ending things, not just mitigating them or making them a more harm reduction, which I support and I agree, and that's why the city wrote a grant with Southside Harm Reduction, and why we've been investing so much in trying to pick up the needles and putting up the boxes all along the Greenway and so forth, where people can drop off the used syringes. But really trying to figure out, how do we end the opioid epidemic? How do we end the commercial sexual exploitation that takes advantage of many vulnerable adults and women specifically in places like Lake Street? I did want to say that in addition to the conversation that's being brought forward through this amendment, there is another conversation happening in City Hall about the LEAD program, which the Public Safety Committee hosted a presentation on it a few weeks ago. And it's a model from Seattle that's a social services intensive wraparound program that once folks are in it, they're in it for the rest of their lives. And not in a bad way, but in a way of understanding that folks sometimes relapse and that we have to be there for them, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. And so we've been meeting internally with MPD leadership, the city attorney's office, want to pull in the Office of Violence Prevention, and wanted to make sure we got through the budget cycle this time around so that that program and that department can be in good footing. And then want to lean on the health department as the umbrella department for the Office for Violence Prevention. And the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department is really interested in trying to figure out, how do we as an enterprise come together, pulling in the HEAT task force, which is the commercial sexual, actually it's the human trafficking task force within the city, to really help us figure out, how do we support this programming long-term with a multi-year budget, and in a way where everyone is in agreement on the philosophy and the outcomes. And I've been pretty persistent on outcomes, because I've been on the council for 6 years now, and it feels good to be able to fund community groups to do this work, but sometimes the city's not so good about getting results from those investments. And I think that we have to learn how to be better partners in delivering those results. And I'm not quite sure what the solution is yet, but we, I think, are growing in that path of trying to figure out, how do we not only become a municipality and a regulator, but also a funder that is able to deliver results with our communities that really help to support the women that we see on Lake Street who are being preyed upon, to really exit that life and have a place that's safe and healthy for them and their families? And how do we support the folks who have to sell drugs on the streets because there's nothing else where they can go to make money and feel welcomed into society? And so really doubling down on those efforts and focusing on them. And I'm a proponent of, instead of funding 100 things, let's and see what works well, let's really identify the 3 things that are going to solve this issue and really invest in those areas. So thank you to the authors of this amendment, and I hope that we can continue to work on this in other ways.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wow, this is a tough vote, and I am challenged to be able to support this amendment at this time. I really wish I would have had more opportunity to spend time with this and be in conversation about it. I have been in conversation with the chief, and while this may be one of our largest recruit classes, it's also one of our most diverse recruit classes ever. The chief literally speaks with each and every recruit and talks about his vision for the department, identifies their commitment. And so at a time when we know that it is really challenging to get people to step up and be a part of the Minneapolis Police Department and the kinds of individuals that we hope are going to be able to help to transform the department in ways that Chief Arredondo is visioning, I am not comfortable with reducing this class at this time.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate all my colleagues' willingness to participate in the discussion. I think it's actually really great that we do our business out here like this now, and it's tricky business. It's challenging to do representative democracy. I just wanted you to be aware that we do have 5 days. We're not approving the budget today. This is a way that at least we could get something up in front of everyone who pays attention to this stuff, but particularly all my colleagues here, so that you could see it. And I'm listening, and I believe Councilmember Bender and Ellison are also listening. I'm hearing that there are some concerns and issues. I'm now hearing this cadet class size is really important to some people. Maybe that was the wrong source to go for the funding. I'm hearing that there might be other program initiatives, including social services wraparound for people who are being pulled into human trafficking and this LEAD program. And I'm also hearing there's concerns about capacities for some of the departments to handle the funding that we're suggesting goes to them or some of the divisions. So I think there's time to maybe work on things, and hopefully we can keep discussing this. And I know there's some other people in queue, and I'm anxious to hear your comments, and I encourage everybody to weigh in on this, and appreciate the discussion. I don't have an amendment on the fly to create based on your input, and I still support this motion. You might try amending it if you want to, but I just wanted to put that out there, that this is now before us, and we can work on it.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate Councilmember Gordon's comments on this. I've been listening to as well to colleagues on this, and I really appreciate the different sources that the authors of this amendment are looking at funding. I think these are all things that are important work throughout our city, and I'm seeing that reflected in the comments, even from colleagues who have reservations about this, for whether it's just seeing it now or concerns around how this plays into the compromise that was worked out. I also want to commend my colleagues, particularly Council Member Fletcher, Cunningham, Goodman, and also the mayor for their work on that compromise. I think it's been really inspiring because in past budget years, we've seen lots of division and conflict over issues, and this feels like one of the kind of weightiest issues, public safety right now, and I think they really showed leadership stepping up working on this. I also agree with my colleagues that this is something I want to get to a yes on. I want to feel that I can support this. I'm doing the math, counting votes here by what others have said. It looks like a vote today on this would fail. So as I'm listening to colleagues, I'm thinking this through, I'd like to, and I haven't talked with anybody about this, but I'd like to actually offer a motion to postpone this or to table this until our next budget markup meeting in the hopes that our colleagues can work together on compromise so that our colleagues have time to explore this further, to have those discussions, and so that we can feel comfortable, so hopefully we can get to a yes on funding these different sources. So I'd like to put that forward today as a motion and hope we can all work together on this and see the collaboration continue so we can fund these important programs.
Thank you. We have a motion to postpone from Councilmember Johnson. In queue to speak about it is Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would encourage folks not to support this motion. I mean, part of the reason that we have this markup and then give some time between now and the public hearing is for transparency and public participation. And while I think there is a lot of overall agreement, there is also places of disagreement. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that. We can work well together as a body in governing this city, and we can also fulfill our obligation to the public to have transparent public debate. And so I would really discourage us from doing that today. I want to acknowledge that I've gotten a lot of comments from my constituents, and this is a response to them. So on their behalf and on your constituents' behalf, I would ask that we take a vote today and follow that up with another vote on Wednesday if needed.
Thank you. Seeing no further in queue or with their flags up to speak to the postponement, I will call the question on this motion to postpone. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. I'm sorry, no. if I may again. All those in favor of postponing this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay?
No.
Nay. The noes have it, and we are back to the motion 7B that is before you. Council President, did you also want to speak again to this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I think I forgot to acknowledge that this really was a response from my constituents. I've heard from a lot of folks in Ward 10 who had concerns about the overall budget and its balance in terms of investing in policing versus violence prevention. And I do also want to note that I do think there's a huge amount of shared interest in investing in violence prevention, but that is really squeezing out the rest of our budget. And we have a lot of other progressive priorities that are not related to public safety. So part of my concern about continuing to grow the overall public safety budget instead of making trade-offs is that we're squeezing the money that's available for other things. And especially in an ongoing way, because a lot of this money is ongoing, and that could be used for staff and other program areas. It could be used for long-term investments in economic empowerment and other, really other important things. So I think that we should always keep that in mind when we're talking, especially about ongoing funds.
Thank you. Is there anybody else interested in speaking to this motion? I will go ahead and call the question on this motion as moved by Ellison, Councilmember Ellison. There are a lot of things that I want to say about it. I think the most important pieces of this are really more about financial directions. There's $750,000 in change items that were booked into the 5-year financial direction with the help of finance and a lot of their quick work. Director Intermill will run firm numbers and share this with council. I want him to have time to absolutely ensure that it is accurate. Director Intermill, did you want to say anything else about some of the things I fear that... What?
So,
I am hearing pressure to not have Director Intermill speak about it now. I will ask that he sends an email about it to clarify later that it will be public. Councilmember Ellison's motion had asked for a roll call vote, and so I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Reich.
Nay.
Gordon.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Nay.
Cunningham.
Nay.
Ellison.
Aye.
Warsami.
No.
Goodman.
No.
Jenkins.
Nay.
Kano.
Nay.
Bender.
Aye.
Schrader.
No.
Johnson.
No.
Chair Palmisano.
No.
There are 3 ayes and 10 nays.
Thank you. That motion fails. Moving on to amendment number 8. Item number 8 is about the Loring Greenway. This motion is being carried by Councilmember Goodman. I will turn it over to her for explanation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does Micah want to comment on this one too? Just checking, because this is an amendment that has been brought forward, taking money from something downtown and moving it towards something else downtown. We own an asset called the Loring Greenway. The Loring Greenway has some really good things happening and some less good things happening, one of which is a wonderful nonprofit was started by a number of neighbors to raise money and maintain the Greenway in conjunction with Public Works, and that's happened for many years. Now that's not working so well, and we really feel like it might be possible to get Green Minneapolis to take over management of this space. This would allow us to do that should that agreement be reached. I don't anticipate at this point that all of the money will be used, but most of it will be used, and we want to be able to make sure we can transfer this asset's management of Friends of the Loring Greenway in the future. So I'm going to move approval.
Councilmember Goodman moves approval of the Loring Greenway motion. Are there any in queue or that aren't in queue that wish to speak to this motion? Seeing none, I will call this for approval. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Item number 9 is a motion brought by the Council President for funding on our ongoing wage theft efforts. Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a motion to amend the Mayor's 2020 recommended budget in the General Fund for Civil Rights and CPED on an ongoing basis. It increases the expense budget in the General Fund for the Civil Rights Department by $90,000 ongoing for an additional labor standards investigator, which is 1 FTE, and $69,000 ongoing for collaborative enforcement of the city's wage theft ordinance. It reduces the ongoing general fund expense budget in the Community Planning and Economic Development Department by $159,000. This is associated with a vacant transit-oriented development director position. And I'll just comment briefly. First, I want to thank the authors of the wage theft ordinance that passed earlier this year, Councilmember Palmisano, Councilmember Cunningham, and Councilmember Fletcher. This was a really important step forward for our city. And in order to be successful, I think we need to be able to enforce this new law. I think this is one step to doing that, and probably in the future, this area of labor standards enforcement is a place that needs more significant investment to enforce not just this, but our previous ordinances of providing safe and sick time, as well as the minimum wage. The source of this funding is a position that had been created by Mayor Reich in CPED. It's an appointed position that has been vacant for several years. This motion would take the funds associated with that position, but it would allow CPED to come back in the future with an appointed position like this one. I think this may evolve since that position was originally created. I understand there are some HR issues with creating new appointed positions, and so this would maintain the ability to do that more simply than starting that whole process over again. But to be clear, that would require us to refund that position in the future. I'm happy to answer any questions about this and really want to thank my colleagues for their support of wage theft. We are seeing increasing development in our city. I think in this year alone, it will be $2 billion of real estate investment. We have a huge need to do more inspections and enforcement in the construction industry, as well as other industries in our city, the restaurant industry, as well, and others. And I think we've done a lot of work to be also supportive of our small businesses, doing some community engagement this year that the authors made sure happened to make sure that businesses know that this is coming. So we're doing both that supportive community engagement work as well as this collaborative enforcement strategy.
Thank you. Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that I'm very supportive of this and really happy to see the Council President bring this forward. I wanted to add that my office has been working on figuring out how to better support Spanish-speaking, immigrant-owned small businesses to really understand the changing labor laws of our city, because for that particular sector, in the entrepreneurial sector, in the business sector, it's really hard to kind of keep up with just kind of like the mainstream laws and then all the changes that are coming from whether it's the federal, state, county, city level. So we are starting to look into those pieces, and my staff has reached out to CPED to try to figure out if some of their programs are able to meet that need or how we're meeting that need. So I just wanted to sort of put a little flag on here that I'm really supportive of doing the work that helps to enforce these rules rules and laws and helps to educate workers and helps to engage workers to advocate for themselves in these in this landscape. But I think equally we also have to figure out how to properly and consistently and proactively provide information in different languages to our small and immigrant business owners so that they can keep up with this information and be set up for success as well. So thank you for bringing this forward. I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councilmember Fletcher.
And I thought we had said we were to the end of our crime prevention docket. Here we are, wage theft is theft, and that's something that we all declared very clearly earlier in the year, and we are making an investment in enforcing that. I'm so appreciative of this motion. We have heard from the business community that they need help understanding it, and that having the staff to be responsive to their questions is going to be important for us, and that for workers, the ability to call the city and get help when they're not getting paid the wages that they're owed is absolutely critical. So I'm thrilled to support this, and I appreciate you bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As one of the co-authors of the wage theft ordinance and also a champion of the Civil Rights Department, I just want to also say thank you to Council President Bender for bringing this forward. One of the challenges is that we have issues. They are identified. We codify the work, and then we need to grow the capacity to do so. So thank you so much for being mindful of this and building it into this budget.
Thank you. Seeing no more people in queue, I'm going to go ahead and call this. I'm going to take a voice vote on item number 9, motion by Council President Bender on the wage theft position. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Item number 10 is a piece about neighborhood public safety. Speaking of not being done yet with our public safety items, and I will allow Councilmember Warsame to explain the motion. I also, Councilmember Warsame, I know you had a tragic fire recently in your ward, and that you would also like to take a moment to highlight an investment in the mayor's recommended budget that will improve the quality of life and safety of many of your constituents that live in public housing high-rises. So, Councilmember Warsame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So let me start with item number 10. And item number 10 is a motion amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget in the general fund for the health department on a one-time basis, increasing the expense budget in the general fund for the health department by $100,000 one time for public safety programming in the Office of Violence Prevention. These monies shall be deployed for strategies to reduce crime in the following neighborhoods and at the following amounts. Ventura Village, $40,000, Phillips West, $40,000, with at least $15,000 supporting the Phillips West Safety Center, and Stevens Square, $20,000. And if I can speak to this motion, I believe that public safety at the micro level is very important, especially with the neighborhoods at the neighborhood level. And these neighborhoods have been, suffering lately in terms of the perception of crime and actual crime as well. And they have strategies in place, and they need the support from the city. And I think this is worthwhile investment in our neighborhoods in Ward 6, especially in the light of, we remember the encampment in Ventura Village. In fact, we had a couple of hundred homeless and vulnerable folks, but they were housed in Ward 6. And the Navigation Center was also housed in Ward 6. And we've had, we took the burden from the rest of the city in terms of, taking care of those folks. And there has been, an outpouring of issues and comments from these neighborhoods. And I think this is just a small investment back into these neighborhood organizations in order for them to address some of the public safety issues that they're facing currently.
Thank you. Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, and I don't necessarily oppose the destination for these funds, but the amendment is a little unclear to me about where they're coming from. It looks like we're just instructing the department to spend the $100,000 in this way, but it doesn't identify where the funds would be.
Thank you. And that's the same, if I may add, if I may respond.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilmember Gordon. I think that's the same question Councilmember Goodman had, and I'll give it to the Budget Director to explain. Go ahead.
Just to note, because I'm going to have a lot more amendments pretty soon if this is the way that we can just do it.
Director Intermill, could you please clarify item number 10?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Gordon, I apologize, there's not an unlimited source of funds. The source of funds for this amendment, in addition to there was $50,000 in one of the series of compromise public safety amendments, and also amendment number 11, which will be brought next by Councilmember Warsame. That $200,000 in total was made available. You'll remember during the technical amendment, I mentioned that we are moving $200,000 of net debt bond from a park board project that was not needed for that park board project to the MPD First Precinct project, and taking from that MPD First Precinct project $200,000 of general fund cash. And so that $200,000 is being used to fund this amendment labeled number 10, the amendment labeled number 11, and then $50,000 of one of those previous amendments.
So if I could add.
Go ahead.
I think it would really be helpful if we could have that articulated in the written amendments before. I don't even it might be nice to see it corrected or stipulated in the amendment, and we could vote on it later this afternoon, just so that's really clear and it's clear in the council action, because this just feels a little bit incomplete and I'm nervous about it. And I promise I won't craft another amendment to go after those same sources in the meantime, but I don't know if that makes any sense. Or maybe we can read it into the record, and so that we will see it later in the action that we take. Although this isn't a full council meeting, so I don't know that we need the written language.
Madam Chair, if I may respond, I think from the budget office standpoint, I would defer to my city clerk and city attorney colleagues. We would feel comfortable leaning on the council intent that was just articulated by Councilmember Gordon. If you would like it written, we would be happy to write that up too.
Thank you. I'm also seeing agreement from the author. Part of why this couldn't be articulated in this packet is because we had not yet, until the technical amendments were complete earlier in the day, have this money available to be moved. So this is part of the $200,000 moved from the park board to the police department and now taken out of the police department. That also complicates the total number of money that you asked about previously, about how much money is coming out of the police department budget, because this went in there and now is coming out for something else. So I am going to move to postpone this item to the last item on today's agenda, so that we can have it all documented and written down for the record. All those in favor with moving to postpone?
No. Councilmember Goodman's
I'm sorry, Councilmember Goodman, did you want to speak to this amendment right now before I move to postpone it until later? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I kind of feel like this is a little bit unfair and a little bit too behind the scenes for my taste. That whole series of amendments brought by Mayor Frey and then Council Members Cunningham, Fletcher, and I also counted on something happening before something else happened, but we identified what the sources were in advance for everyone to see. Now, I represent part of Stevens Square, and I am extremely empathetic to the situation in Phillips West and Ventura Village. So I would support and will support money going to public safety in this area, but I feel like we all need to be on the same playing field. And to suggest that this money, you can't say what the source was because it hadn't passed first, but it made it into a packet of amendments. That was the same exact thing that happened in items 1 through 7, where we knew we had to make a big change before we allocated the money to other places, but that was transparent. So I'm just wondering from the finance staff if this is just transparent. You want transparency from some people and not others? Or we can just, I kind of agree with Councilmember Gordon, that I'm going to bring a whole bunch of stuff forward without a source.
Director Intermill, did you want to respond to that at this time? Neither do I. I'm going to move to postpone this motion until the end, until it can come back with more clarity. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Councilmember Goodman, did you have anything else to share on the main motion that we have just postponed? Actually, I don't think that I can call on you because we have voted to postpone it. So we will move to item number 11.
And item number,
Madam Chair, can I just make a really quick comment? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And apologies for the interruption. I actually agree very much with what Councilmember Goodman just said. I did just want to pause and say that I think finance staff is really balancing, confidentiality with individual elected officials who are asking them to provide technical assistance and, prepare these items for us under our direction. So I just want to say that I don't know the details of how this got here at all, but I know that when I'm working with finance staff, I actually do expect them to really not share things that I'm working on unless I've told them that it's okay. So I think probably these kinds of questions about our procedures and our practices is better directed at, toward the body as elected officials, because I think staff is working really hard to support us all in a way that's both transparent, but also allows us to be able to work with them on things that we may not be ready to share yet, or we may need, want to share on our own, not through staff. So.
Madam Chair, let me just add one thing before I speak to 11, which I think we'll have to postpone because it has the same the source that we've had for item 10. That the buck stops with me and my office. I don't think that the finance staff should be blamed or that they should be, singled out. We asked for this support. They worked hard to find it. They found it, and in the event of Councilmember Gordon should appreciate that we're moving money from the police department and giving it to the neighborhood. And Councilmember Goodman, is right. We should have transparency and accountability, and that's why we're going to move it to the end, where you will see the source, and we, hopefully, representing Stephen Square, you will support this motion. And if I may read this one, we'll push it back. Again, this is amending the 2020 Mayor's recommended budget in the general fund for the Community Planning and Economic Development Department on a one-time basis, increasing the expense budget in the general fund for the Community Planning and Economic Development by $50,000 one time for the Cultural Districts, Co-op, and Employee Owner Opportunity Fund for a total of $150,000 one time for that change item. This additional $50,000 added through this amendment shall be deployed specifically in conjunction with the cooperative public market for the Africa Village project in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood. And as you're aware, we live in a very unequal city. And one of the things I've been working on since I've been on the council is to try to make sure that our communities of color and the East African community in particular gets certain support. And one of the projects I've been working on was the Africa Village project. But to underline that this project should be community owned and underline community ownership is the cooperative model. And this amendment number 11, is supporting the establishment of a co-op to eventually own and run the public market that we've designated for Cedar Riverside.
Thank you. So Councilmember Warsame, you are moving amendment number 11 at this time.
Yes.
Correct? Thank you. Councilmember Cano.
Can the author please clarify the source of the $50,000?
It's the same source that we had for item number 10.
Which is currently not codified or documented anywhere.
But we will document this.
Okay, so obviously I can't support this item. And additionally, I just wanted to share that the cultural district's work currently cannot get this prescriptive. And so we haven't even designated cultural districts across the city yet, much less special projects within those areas. I'm really hesitant to try to bring in the Africa Village project under the cultural districts umbrella, just because the two projects are very different. They have had very different formations and different types of community engagement that I don't think we can really bundle up right now. This makes me feel really, really nervous about the future of cultural districts, knowing that we're kind of jumping the gun with this specific prescriptive staff direction or budget amendment. It would be like me trying to put the Roof Depot project under cultural districts. It just doesn't, it's not compatible. And I would be worried that cultural districts would be compromised if we put the Africa Village project in there. So I think we should really treat them as separate projects. There's plenty of other vehicles that the author could use to try to deploy $50,000 into the Africa Village project. So I can't support this.
Yep.
Speaking to the clerk, right now, through hand gestures and the like, it is my intent to actually postpone this item and have it come back again at the end because of the source of money. Councilmember Warsame, did you have anything?
Yes, I wanted to basically clarify that we're not talking about the cultural districts per se. This was a terminology about the cooperatives and the co-ops that was in the budget that we've all agreed upon. This is just adding $50,000 to that lump to create a cooperative or a co-op, which is basically public ownership of the market. So I think we had this talk about culture and the word culture and how it's used, and I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes, but this is basically just saying $50,000 to create a cooperative owned by the community for the public market as it goes along. So I hope that clarifies.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to put forward a motion to postpone this until the end. I'm getting a nod from the clerk that I should actually make that motion formally. For both, that way both of these will come back at the end. So this is just a voice vote that item number 11 come back at the end of markup today with some additional clarification written out. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries, and we will come back to this later on today. Item number 12.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the final item that, one of the final items that I have on the list, and this is amending the 2020 Mayor's recommended budget in the General Fund for the Health and Finance Property Services Departments on a one-time basis, increasing the expense budget in the General Fund for Health by $50,000 one time for a new youth coordinating board change item. The Health Department shall direct these funds to the Youth Coordinating Board in support of a part-time youth workers to work in the Cedar Riverside and Seward neighborhood, and reducing the expense budget in the General Fund for Finance and Property Services by $50,000 one time. This reduction shall come from the Asset Management Strategy change item. And if I may speak to this, last year, Councilmember Gordon and myself proposed a youth coordinating board program in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood and Seward neighborhood, and we got a feedback. Both of us went in meetings. We got feedback that that project was very successful. The community supported it a great deal, and I feel that continuing that project for the next year would serve the community of Cedar Riverside and Seward greatly, and would love to have the support of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cunningham, did you want to speak to this item?
Nope, that's okay.
Okay. Councilmember Gordon.
Yeah, this has been very successful. I'm very supportive. I'd actually like to be added as an author to this motion, and I appreciated working with Councilmember Warsame on it. And we will be hearing a report with all the data from the youth outreach workers coming to our committee in the months ahead, early next year. Thanks.
I will accept that as a friendly a part of this motion, seeing the nod from Councilmember Warsame. Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm supportive of this motion. I did want to note that this might just be my need to familiarize myself better with the Youth Coordinating Board, but I want to make sure that I and we understand the role of that committee in recommending funding sources that are related to youth programming, especially noting that that is one of our 3 priorities that were adopted as part of the Strategic and Race Equity Action Plan. Earlier in the budget cycle, I have the responsibility or opportunity, or however you want to look at it, to serve on the Board of Estimate and Taxation along with Councilmember Warsame, and we were discussing there the idea of funding more youth outreach work through the Park Board. And the mayor argued strongly against that, suggesting it really needed to go through the Youth Coordinating Board first for a recommendation. So I just want to make sure that we are treating all of the things that are related to youth programming equally, and that we understand the role of this board versus our own authority as elected officials in the city to invest in youth programming in the future. So I'm supportive of this motion again, and I'm just committing to take the time myself to talk with my colleagues more and understand how this board is working, how we could improve our collaborations and really make good on that commitment that we did make to invest more in youth programming.
Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham.
Madam Chair, may I address a component of what Council President Bender just said? So I just want to say for clarification with the outreach teams that is a program under the Youth Coordinating Board, much the same as like the Minneapolis Youth Congress and other projects that come out of the Youth Coordinating Board. This is a program under that. So they're not approving funding for money going out in that way. It's not like a contract. So I just wanted to clarify that the money goes directly to the YCB and then they allocate it to a program that exists. So I understand you're saying you want to do like a larger analysis. I just wanted to explain that particular component of it.
Thank you. Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to be very clear, I think I'm just not sure that everything related to youth funding, including that a request from an independently elected body, the Park Board, needs to go through the Youth Coordinating Board. I think it could and may benefit from that, but I just want to recognize that tension. And again, very appreciative of this amendment and supportive.
Thank you. All those in favor of Councilmember Warsami's motion on Youth Coordinating Board outreach, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Item number 13 is about...
I have one more amendment. I wasn't able to number it. 12A, okay, so 12A. So this is the one about the fire, the sprinkler. And I think my colleagues should have a copy of it. And
Okay.
It's a small motion. Yep, small motion. Let me just get my copy. It's a small motion, basically. And this is a small motion. It doesn't really change. It doesn't have a monetary change. But what it does is it makes an amendment. And this amendment is any capital contribution from the City of Minneapolis to the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority for high-rise buildings is conditioned upon installation of fire sprinklers and other fire suppression required under code for new construction. And this is because we're giving MPHA energy-efficient improvements investment of $2.3 million on the mayor's budget. I want to commend the mayor for this investment in public housing. This is a very important asset. It's a public infrastructure. And this will, and if I may remind my colleagues, this $2.3 million in one-time TIF funding for MPHA will help preserve 174 deeply affordable units and leverage $19.4 million in other funding. This will help reduce energy costs by 40% and the carbon footprint by 50% and improve livability and accessibility for residents. And if I may remind you, the MPHA high-rise units or senior high-rises are homes to 5,325 extremely low-income residents, 84% of which are elderly and disabled. And if I may remind you, on last Wednesday, there was a fire in one of the high-rises, and we lost 5 individuals, residents, neighbors, loved ones. And this motion basically just codifies and just says that this money that we're giving, it should, with the redevelopment of the Elliott twins, sprinklers and fire suppression should be at the heart of that. And I would love to have the support of my colleagues. Comments.
Thank you. So this is pertinent to the item that was passed out by Councilwoman Sami's office a little bit earlier. I'm sorry. It does go together with some of this, just in a little different way.
And if I add, that again, that's the fault of myself and my office, and the clerk reminded us that it wasn't numbered, so appreciate that.
Councilmember Warsami, you've had a very difficult past week, and we all understand. Councilmember Schrader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be supporting this, but I do want to speak out that money that we are spending on fire safety improvements that are needed will cut down on the amount of energy efficiency that we're able to do. There's been a lot of talk. This is a very hard issue. I I think this is going to be this is a hard day for all of us. But I think there's been a lot of talk from the county as well as the state about what the city needs to do on fire suppression. I would look. Public housing has been underfunded on every level of government for decades, and I think that when we're stepping up and doing more, we need to stand and also say that other governments, other elected officials need to be standing with us financially.
Thank you, Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. I absolutely want to echo Councilmember Schrader's comments, and I don't know, I guess his urging of other jurisdictions to be engaged in this work. I'm just curious, is this amendment contingent upon fire suppression installation in every high-rise before we authorize funding, or I'm just not clear?
Councilmember Warsame.
Madam Vice President and Councilmember Schrader, I totally agree with you that the public housing or MPHA has been underfunded by the federal government, that has in the past been the sole funder of public housing authorities across the country. However, it would be negligent of us that we would put $2.3 million investment in public housing. And this money they're actually leveraging. They're going to redevelop the whole Elliott Twins. So there's a big plan to redevelop it. What I want to make sure is, while they're redeveloping the kitchens and the bathrooms and making sure that they add in extra disabled units and fixing the facade of the building, that they don't forget that we need fire sprinklers. And, I think the chief told me a long time ago when I first started that, there's seldom been deaths in buildings where you had adequate fire sprinklers. And if we had adequate fire sprinklers at the 630 building, we might have not had the tragedy that we had. So this is for the Elliott Twins. And going forward, we want to make sure that once you're doing the redevelopment of the high rises, whether it's in the Horn Towers or in other parts of the city, that fire sprinklers and fire suppression should be at the heart of it. So yes, their plan at the Elliott Twins is to do total rehab, not just for the energy efficient, but total rehab. The energy efficiency is part of it, but we want to make sure that the fire sprinklers are in there. And actually, we did speak to MPHA. We didn't want to throw them under the bus. We did speak to them, and they did say that they had the plan to have fire sprinklers in there. But we want to make sure that as a body, that we had a tragedy. 5 of our residents died, and we want to make sure that we alleviate the fear that some of the folks that live in high rises have now, that going forward, this issue will be taken seriously. And out of the 42, and I'm glad to report that out of the 42 high rises that we have, 16 have already had sprinklers work done. But we want to make sure going forward that we continue on that path, and that Elliott Twins serves as a reminder that we can do it. Once we put our mind to it, that we make sure that our residents, like I said, 84% are vulnerable seniors, folks with disabilities. The people that passed away were seniors and folks with disabilities. They weren't even able to get away. So we want to make sure that we're thinking about them as we're crafting these policies and we're giving these fundings.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else needing to speak on this item, so I'm going to call this item for approval. For a vote. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Item number 13 is a motion by Council Vice President Jenkins, Council Members Cunningham and Reich. It is about the trans equity position, and I will turn it to Council Vice President Jenkins for an explanation. I also want to note that it is not the same motion as the one that's currently in your packets. It's one that was distributed to us. It has the number 13 on the top right-hand side. It does change the funding source. Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that notation. I actually am offering a substitute motion to the one that had been presented in our packet. and that is to amend the 2020 mayor's recommended budget in the general fund for the fire and city coordinator departments on an ongoing basis, increasing the expense budget in the general fund for the city coordinator department by $90,000 ongoing for a new transgender equity coordinator position. The change item including one additional staff member to the Division of Race and Equity to support a transgender equity coordinator, one FTE, and reducing the ongoing general fund expense budget in the fire department by $90,000. And this reduction shall come from the add civilian FTEs change item. And as we know, we have heard from many of our residents that transgender and gender nonconforming individuals are some of the most impoverished community members, facing all sorts of challenges, from police violence, from transphobia, from lack of access to housing and appropriate health care. And so this position will help to address some of those concerns, particularly in organizing community members, as well as organizing events that bring the transgender and gender nonconforming voice to the city of Minneapolis to help us make decisions that impact the least or the most marginalized members of our community. So I am asking for my colleagues to please support this amendment.
Thank you. Council Vice President Jenkins has moved amendment number 13. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Vice President, for collaborating on this. The work that we have happening in the area of trans equity really is unmatched in the country. We have an annual Trans Equity Summit that was started by our Council Vice President. We have a Trans Issues Work Group that is a cross-departmental, interjurisdictional work group that really examines how does trans equity show up throughout the entire city enterprise and other jurisdictions, as well as the Transgender Equity Council, which I am the author or the person who led that, and so which is really taking off and really being owned by the community members who are in that. We have institutionalized trans voices in city government through the work that has already been done, but what is necessary is to ensure that we have the capacity to be able to honor those voices, to be able to continue to build on the work and carry it forward. We are really doing groundbreaking, important work, and we have the opportunity here at the city of Minneapolis to continue to be a model and an example for the rest of the country as to how to be of support to the trans community. We talk a lot about equity as a priority, and so we have to think about it as intersectionally as possible, because when we think about race, when you add being a trans person in addition to being a person of color, the disparities astronomically go up. We are the only city in the country, we're actually the only legislative body in the world that has 2 trans people on it. And the fact that we're both Black trans people is even more anomalous. We are the exception, not the rule. And so while we are here in these positions of power, it's important to ensure that we are looking back at our community and lifting folks up with us. And so in so doing, I ask for my cisgender colleagues. For those who don't know, transgender is not identifying with the gender assigned at birth. Cisgender means that you do identify with the gender assigned at birth. I ask my cisgender colleagues to please support us in these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gordon? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Schrader.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I want to thank the authors for not just bringing forward this, but also all the groundbreaking work they do. I'd like to also put forward hopefully what is a friendly amendment. I definitely support the budget amendment, but I do have issues with the source. I would like to see if this would be possible instead of going for the civilian FTEs, but instead just to take from the base budget of the fire department itself.
Okay. Director Intermill, did you want to comment on that?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I missed the question.
Well, I can elaborate a little bit more. What the fire department was looking for in creating those FTEs would actually help save the city some money, as well as hopefully help the health of the fire officers themselves. And I want to make sure that we're continuing to allow the fire department to go forward with that work and have the allocation, have the authority to create those civilian FTEs, but take from their base budget the same amount of money.
Thank you for that clarification. I just want to make sure that we're being consistent with the amount of detail that we're requiring and some other amendments that are coming back. So, Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had the same concern, and frankly, I defer to our finance staff as well, but we don't really have base budgets in our departments. Really most activities should be allocated to a specific function. And so again, I can let finance go into more detail on that and maybe describe a different way that the same intention could be met. I'm also open to other sources. There aren't a lot of sources available. Again, kind of back to I don't want to belabor this, but we've added an enormous amount of money for public safety. And so it really does just leave us on this really edges of what else is available for funding.
So, Council President, Councilmember Schrader, I think that if I'm understanding you correctly, your desire is to have the fire department continue to have the ability to hire the civilian FTE associated with health and wellness. And I think that whether $90,000 is loosely taken from the base, and I appreciate Council President's comments from that current service level, or taking it specifically from the amendment, I think as written, if we just take these dollars from the amendment, we can still include the amendment with the authorization for the FTE. So the fire department would be able to use its discretion to reallocate some of those current service level dollars to fill the position.
Thank you. Councilmember Reich.
Thank you, Madam President. I love the clarification intention, but I think the reason why we're being specific was to make sure that our intentions are clear, that this is not coming from our first responder resources, the equipment that goes into supporting our first responder resources, that we're very clear that a function that may be valuable could actually be done theoretically through other departments, HR, et cetera. And it's something that is not sort of immediate in terms of departmental needs. It's more of an evolutionary approach, which I do support, but something that we can certainly put the pause button on or look for additional ways to accomplish it. And so to that end, I really do appreciate the fact that it's specific, and I wish we would continue with this specific notion and motion as it's drafted by the authors.
Thank you, Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would ask my colleagues to vote no on this amendment. As alluded to earlier, we want to bring the fire department, the police department, in line with all of our other departments. And so consequently, the efforts that this FTE is intended to work on in the fire department is work that can be done in our human resources department, and I would argue potentially should be done in our human resources department. So the specificity of this budget amendment is to really ensure that we are leaving the staffing levels at the fire department and our first responders whole, and really looking at other ways to accomplish the goals that this FTE was intended to address.
Councilmember Gordon.
Well, I certainly am supportive of the staff position and the addition. I'm a little bit concerned of all this because I haven't heard from the fire chief. I'm not sure if there was any discussion with them, and it sounds like we're hearing from the department that they feel that they can live without this money in their department, but they would like the flexibility and some more flexibility and not have it identified. And I'm not assuming for one moment that the chief is suggesting that they take resources from first responders or lay somebody, a firefighter, off. That's just my automatic assumption. But I also assume with a budget that large, there's probably some other flexibility that he has. So I'm rather supportive of the amendment to add that flexibility, which also means it ultimately could come back and come from that position, because we're just saying we're not going to specify it right now. And I just wish that I had the opportunity, even a quick 30-minute lunch break, maybe to try to get some communication from the, not to, change the subject, but even to get something from the chief saying why he feels this is important or doesn't care or doesn't, So I'm in a tough spot, and I'm certainly want to support the original action, but I don't see the harm in the amendment either.
Councilmember Schrader.
Sure, just to add a little clarity, and I'm in the exact same spot as Councilmember Gordon. I would want to talk a little bit more about the fire chief, and I think it sounds like there's been some conversations that I just have not been privy to about with other council members. So I stick by the amendment. I think that I want to continue to make sure the fire department has what they need. I very much support the underlying amendment, but would like to find a way to make that work.
Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. After some more clarification and conversation from Finance, it seemed to me that that we could get to an amendment that would satisfy Councilmember Schrader without affecting the underlying intention of the authors. So I'm also interested to see if that could be worked out.
Councilmember Schrader.
Yeah, just to respond to that, I would be too. But what I heard from other council members was that they did want to spend that clarification.
Okay, we're going to first call a vote on Councilmember Schrader's amendment to Amendment 13 as to whether or not to make this source more general, if I can. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. That item does not carry. Back to amendment number 13, the underlying.
Madam Chair, could we have a roll call for that? I trust your judgment, but
clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Reich.
Nay.
Gordon.
Aye.
Fletcher.
No.
Cunningham.
Nay.
Ellison.
Nay.
Warsami.
Nay.
Goodman.
No.
Jenkins.
No.
Kano.
no.
Bender.
Aye.
Schrader.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Chair Palmisano.
No.
There are 4 ayes and 9 nays.
Thank you. Thank you. Back to the underlying motion on amendment number 13. Councilmember Gordon, did you have anything further to say before we call the vote on this motion?
Well, I guess I'll support it, even though it does have, it's maybe pushing the fire chief somewhere where he doesn't really want to go. Hopefully we can maybe fix that on Wednesday if that's really the case.
Indeed. Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Equally, interested in continuing conversations. I also, would like more information from fire, and potentially think of this as something we might revisit on Wednesday, or maybe we will get our questions answered. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson, and then Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is more clarification from Micah. Do you think this language would still allow the fire department to allocate the funding elsewhere within their budget for that position?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Johnson, I do. I think it's also important to note that in this particular change item, there are 2 civilian FTEs being added, but only funding for 1. Funding for the other civilian FTE is being redirected by the fire chief. As you'll remember, earlier this year, the mayor, when asking for proposals from departments, suggested, as many of you have, that it's important to look first internally. And so that internal reallocation is happening, at least for 1 position, as the mayor's proposed. And so this would just mean reallocation would need to happen to fill both positions.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I see the other authors in queue to speak again. Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to reiterate, I'm certainly amenable to other opportunities to fund this. However, I do believe we have really looked, and this seems to be the most amenable source at this particular time. But if we can come up with other options, I would be open to that by the end of next week.
Thank you. Councilmember Reich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in a similar fashion, as we delve into further details and working with the department, if a way to express our intent for how it gets appropriated from the department, the flexibility in Schrader, the sense of flexibility that was expressed in the Schrader amendment, I'm willing to, in good faith, pursue that as well between now and our final vote. I'll also just say that a big motivation for me to support my colleagues' efforts, Cunningham and VP Jenkins, is not only because they've so well expressed the need and the purpose, but the testimony both last year and this year really impressed me in terms of the power of the investment, the underlying investment in this motion. It just, to me, was just outstanding in terms of all the testimony we had from last year and this year, how much in the scope of our whole overall budget, we put so much in, and they were expressing how much they got out of it. To me, that is ROI big time. And so however we find the funds, I'm always open. But I think we've got a good start today with this motion.
Thank you. With the queue exhausted, we will do a voice vote on this underlying amendment number 13. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries, and I will note that the authors are very open to it coming back later if we are able to do other things with the funding source. We're going to take a pause now. I have heard back from some colleagues, and there is a 30-minute break requested to get lunch, and we will return back. I will say we will return back at 1:30 and start this committee again with enthusiasm, with renewed energy to power through the rest of these items, beginning right after lunch with item number 14, which is from Councilmember Ellison on items about economic inclusion. So see you at 1:30. We are going to pause. Thank you for allowing our committee this brief adjournment. My name is Lene Palmisano. We're going to continue our committee's work. We do have a quorum of people, and I anticipate others will be joining us in the near future. Just to reconnect, those here on the dais do constitute a quorum of committee. They are Council Members Goodman, Ellison, Schrader, Cunningham, Fletcher, Jenkins, and Reich. We said that we would start again right at 1:30. It is now 1:34, and we're going to invite Councilmember Ellison to go over his amendment. In our packets, it is amendment number 14, and the topic is economic inclusion. Thank you, Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a bittersweet amendment, but I think for the most part, it is something that makes a lot of sense and is really going to work. I'll read the amendment in a moment, but I wanted to provide a little bit of context. First, I want to thank Sean Pierce from the Mayor's Office and Councilmember Gordon and others who sat down and worked with me on a number of items, two of which Councilmember Gordon will be bringing forward shortly. This pertains to the allocation for the Association for Black Economic Power to facilitate their Village Trust financial cooperative project. The city last year had committed $500,000 for them to pursue that project, and this year had committed the same. We're still committed to the 2019 allocation, but because of some hiccups and some delays to their project, they are not prepared to take on this year's allocation. So we're going to be reallocating that money. I spoke with the new ED from the organization yesterday. And she voiced that this move made a lot of sense and voiced support for it. So just wanted to make that known to my colleagues. So I'll read the motion. Amending the 2020 Mayor's recommended budget in the general fund for the community planning and economic development and city coordinator departments on a one-time basis, increasing the expense budget in the general fund for the city departments by $175,000 one time. $125,000 shall be used for a new rent stabilization study change item, and $50,000 shall be used for a new promise zone coordination change item. Reducing the expense budget in the general fund for the community planning and economic development department on a one-time basis by $175,000 one time. This reduction shall come from the village financial change item, and moving $200,000 from the village financial change item into the cultural district's commercial property development fund change item. These additional funds shall be used for development outside of the areas categorized as cultural districts. So that's the amendment, and happy to give any context to the items that the money's going towards as well. So I'll move that motion, and I'm happy to take any questions from colleagues or additional comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Ellison has moved item number 14. Does anybody?
It's not popping up on yours.
It's not popping up on mine, but I do see two people in queue. The first is Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I just want to say that I deeply respect my colleague from the North Side, Councilmember Ellison, and appreciate his work and leadership. With that being said, as a fellow Black North Sider, I'm not supporting this amendment today. First, I just want to clarify that I was told by the new ED that she did not support this change. I respect that she may have said something differently out of respect, but just wanted to clarify that. When we commit to undoing institutionalized racism and the harms caused by it, it is a long-term commitment, particularly those that are cross-sectoral undertakings. Something like Village Financial Cooperative is at least a 10-year commitment, not something that fluctuates with politics and political will. When the work is being done in Black communities to undo the harm that is caused by institutionalized racism, the trauma that comes up from that, or the trauma from that harm comes up. We storm big before we form a norm. We fight, we blow things up, we get stuck. That is a part of the process of working through current and generational trauma. And white businesses and organizations undergo challenges that are similar to what Village Financial Cooperative experienced, and they do not experience a public entity withdrawing their long-term commitment from them. Yes, the $500,000 from last year is still available, but we are the primary public institution funding this work, and we should stand by our long-term commitment to Village Financial Cooperative. The organization is under new leadership, and I'm confident that the money will be put to good use as they are fully ramping up. So as such, I do ask my colleagues to please not support this amendment that moves money away from this critical work that supports the Black community finally getting equitable access to individual and commercial banking and financial products. We can't give up so easily because they sure aren't. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I defer to the author of the amendment to speak to the conversations that have happened before this. I will say that my support for this amendment came after the assurance that the $500,000 that was previously allocated for this use was going to carry forward. My understanding is that there haven't been any dollars expended yet from that $500,000 commitment. That will continue ongoing, or not as ongoing funds, but that will continue to be set aside for this use. And certainly, I would support additional funds once those are, once there's a more clear plan for the funds that have already been allocated. I did just want to speak to the items here and really appreciate this package of different uses. One of which is the rent stabilization study that Councilmembers Ellison and Gordon and I have worked to direct staff to perform through the HPD committee. And while I think that this is a little different than some of the other uses, perhaps not as directly tied to the specifics around the original intended use of these funds, I do think that stabilizing housing costs, and particularly through rent stabilization, would have a transformative impact on economic stability in our communities. And so I appreciate this being part of this. Again, want to just re-emphasize my ongoing support for Village Trust and for the broader work that's around Black economic empowerment specifically, and economic empowerment for people of color generally in our city. So thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Ellison.
Yeah, just wanted to reiterate that to the Council President's point, the allocation from 2019 has not been accessed for the purpose of this project, mostly because of certain delays with the organization have caused them to slow down their project a bit. I think that, I'm not going to get into the he said, she said. I can just speak to the conversation that I had with the ED yesterday. But I think that these uses are extremely important. And I think that it's also important that that we not tie up this money and allocate it to things that are that need to be addressed now. I've also been in deep conversations with the mayor's office about and ABEP on how they can pursue their project and move forward on their project. I'm attending meetings regularly to try to help them solve and get over this hump. Had 2 meetings yesterday just about this item, and so I'm definitely committed to ABEP and then pursuing the village project, and would frankly reject the idea that this is us disinvesting from that purpose. I think that I personally, and I know that the mayor and the council generally, are still really committed to pursuing this and seeing it to fruition. So I appreciate any support from my colleagues, and as well as I'll be supporting Councilmember Gordon's coming amendments related to the same topic. But for the most part, this money is being reallocated again for the purpose of financial inclusion, but things that we can move on this year, and that I think, quite frankly, we need to move on this year. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to our budget director, we did find a typo, I think a slight omission in your amendment, Councilmember Ellison. So with a head nod from you, we can make that administrative change in the 3rd line. We talk about in the general fund for the city coordinator department, I think we mean, and it's right now it just says city department.
Oh, yes, I see that.
Do you concur?
I would. Oh, yes, yeah. That is what it should say. I apologize.
So seeing no other people in the speaking queue or with their flags raised, I will call a voice vote on this motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay. I'm sorry. Nay.
Thank you. That item carries. Next, we have item number 15, and I will turn this over to Councilmember Gordon. The topic of this one is on payday loan refinancing.
Thank you very much. This is also a reallocation of some of the unutilized village financial funding for $75,000 that would create a new payday lending refinancing change item. so that we would get some requests for proposals. This was some of the work that I was hoping that would be being done already with this funding, and there are organizations that are doing it. Essentially, what we're looking for is groups that will help provide refinancing of some of these very onerous payday lending loans that are holding people back. They will have to be zero interest and zero free loans extended over some time period. I'd appreciate folks supporting this, and then we can be getting this money to work in our community where there's definitely a big need. I know that even last term, the council was very concerned about the payday lending problem.
Thank you. Councilmember Gordon moves this motion. Item number 15. Councilmember Ellison.
Just want to voice again my support for this motion and reiterate the fact that addressing predatory payday lending is something that the Village Project was meant to address, and I think will address when it gets fully off the ground. But like I said before, I think it's important to get this work started this year, as people are the targets of this predatory practice. So yeah, just wanted to indicate my support for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Warsame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just like Councilmember Ellison said, I'm very supportive of this as well, and thank the Councilmember Gordon for bringing it up.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in queue to speak to this item? Not seeing any. I will note that this is one of the things that Village Financial is working to do as well. I will call a voice vote on this item. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. That item carries. Next, we have item number 16, Councilmember Gordon, on children's savings accounts. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair Palmisano. This is also using the same source. I think this is the last change item that is finding a more activated use for these funds. That doesn't mean we are making any reductions, actually, because these are the unexpended funds from last year will be rolling forward. But this is to keep the work that was has been spearheaded by the Youth Coordinating Board on creating a college savings account or a children's savings account for residents of Minneapolis. And actually the model that we've been looking at is that it would be we're hoping to start a pilot that would be targeted to those especially in need, in a sense, a way for us to start repairing some of the historical damage that's been done by an unjust economic system, by helping some children start saving for college early. We still have some hurdles to get to, and we're coordinating with what's going on in St. Paul, so this will be a little bridge funding to help us finish drafting and implementing the program. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. For some reason, my queue is not working, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to speak in support of this change item, as it does, I think, help to address the wealth equity issue in communities of color by supporting our young children through savings accounts. It's work that is being done in St. Paul, as was noted by the author, as well as in other cities around the country. And I'm really thrilled that we are finally taking the opportunity to invest in our young people, particularly young people of color, and even more particularly African American young people, to begin to take one step to chip away at the inequities that are so present in our community.
Thank you. Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify for the record that while I support children's savings accounts, I will not be supporting this due to the funds where it's coming from.
Thank you. Seeing no one further in queue to speak to this item, I will call a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion on children's savings accounts, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
That item carries. Next, we have a motion with multiple authors on the topic of sustainability in general. I will turn this over to Councilmember Gordon to share more.
Thank you very much. This is something that came up at the public hearing, and I think we've all got letters from our Energy Vision Advisory Committee on this topic too, that had to do with sustainability funding. I guess there's a complicated mix-up funding that we're going towards our green cost share programs in the past and sustainability efforts, and there was less this year than last year, and this is an effort to restore some of that funding. The funding gap, in my mind, was more like $500,000, but this will bring $350,000 back there. And we're also making sure that some of that goes to support the sustainable building policy development that we approved moving forward on at the last committee meeting. It was difficult finding these funding sources, and I just want to note that the fact that they're coming from the Stable Homes, Stable Schools initiative doesn't indicate that I don't fully support those initiatives and think it's been fantastic, and we've actually got really great results on the first year. However, it took a while for the program to roll out, so some of the first year funds weren't spent, and if we look carefully at what we're anticipating needing to spend next year, they'll still have adequate funding with the remaining $2.2 million that will be there. But I also, if you'll notice, there's a staff direction at the end of this, which is indicating that we will be updating our 5-year financial direction to make sure that these funds are replenished into the Stable Homes, Stable Schools program so that they're there when we actually need them in the years ahead. I suspect that the mayor may also want to speak to this, and also Councilmember Schrader. These are two very good programs, and I think as we're declaring a climate emergency and we're having all these other initiatives, the funding there is very important, but we certainly also want to make sure that we are keeping our investments going in this successful program to see that our homeless youth in our public schools get stable housing.
Thank you. Councilmember Schrader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Councilmember Gordon said, this was something that's critically important but very hard to do. So I first off want to start by thanking the mayor. I know to go and really figure out how we're going to make our commitment to climate change, fighting climate change, and also our commitment to the people of this city is very hard, and I think it was fantastic working with your office to find this. Earlier this week, the Peace Committee unanimously agreed to declare a climate emergency, which really demands that we increase our investments in climate action as we are in this budget. You know, I hear loud and clear, I think many of us do, that all of our neighbors, our youth, our seniors, everybody in between wants us to really work more on climate action. And that means putting our money where our mouth is. This investment really allows us to bring investments in our programs like our really successful Green Cost Share program above and beyond our 2019 levels. The Green Cost Share program is chronically oversubscribed. You know, that means that we have a really successful program that runs out of money really early. This year, they ran out of money in February, leaving a lot of energy savings. People and businesses that wanted to make a difference, we weren't able to get to them this year. We already have over 100 applications for the cost share program in 2020, and that's only from the early application period. We know Minneapolis residents and business owners want access to these resources, which combine private investment, which generate significant investments in clean energy and energy efficiency. This budget includes unprecedented investment in climate action that will enable Minneapolis residents and business owners to save energy and save money, and in the process, really help save our planet. This funding will be especially helpful in environmental justice areas, and this measure allows us to get the funding out the door right now to support the city's goals. I stand fully behind our commitment to fund stable homes, stable schools, as well as serious climate action. And this motion redeploys funding that would otherwise not be spent next year, as Councilmember Gordon talked about, in the Stable Homes, Stable Schools initiative, which is also one that's deeply important to me. I sit on the Stable Home, Stable Schools Steering Committee, and this action, I want to reiterate my commitment to provide the necessary funds to that program as it grows and keeps on continuing to help more families in Minneapolis. The reality is that we have limited resources right now, and we need to be efficient about every dollar that we allocate. This is fully consistent with our priorities, enables us to fund climate action right now, and still provide the necessary funds for stable homes, stable schools over the long term. I just want to be very, very clear that those funds will be replenished, and I look forward to working with my colleagues in the new year to deepen these investments in both housing unsheltered families as well as taking deep climate action. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this item? Mayor Frey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, just a point of clarification regarding a number that Councilmember Gordon had mentioned previously. I believe that, there's about $350,000, I believe, that this amendment takes off of the budget for this year's Stable Homes, Stable Schools allocation. So that would leave the allocation at $3 million, not $2.2 million for this coming year. Just making sure that that's accurate, okay. So I am fully in support of this amendment. We do indeed have a climate crisis right now, and we need to be putting our money where our mouth is. And in terms of the programs that we know have already been functioning exceedingly well, the Green Business Cost Share is one of those items. We've added several different items of ongoing funding that were previously one-time, and this helps to up the one-time addition as well to make sure that we're meeting some of the obligations that we saw last year in terms of reducing per capita climate emissions and CO2. The source is, of course, Stable Homes, Stable Schools, which is something that I care about deeply, and I know other council members do as well. And this also accomplishes the goal of ensuring that we will have the total necessary money over the 3-year pilot, as this money will be replenished next year. So I appreciate working with Councilmember Schrader on this one. This was yet another example of us ensuring that both programs could receive full funding over the full term, and Councilmember Gordon as well. I'm fully supportive of the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bender.
Sorry, one more.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be supporting this today and appreciate the work that went into making sure that we could put these funds to use in a way that's really important for the city. I'm a little concerned that we're setting ourselves up for some difficulty in next year's budget, especially as we try to balance an interest in increasing investment in a lot of priorities with keeping our levy at a reasonable amount, in terms of the property tax increases that our constituents are seeing. And our city is growing right now, so I support this year's levy. I think it is capturing the growth that we're seeing in our city, investing in a good way. At the same time, I know that we're hearing from a lot of constituents, including in my ward, where 80% are renters and don't even see their property tax statement, that homeowners and renters alike are being, impacted by the increases that they're seeing in their property taxes. So as we look to balance that, I just want to make sure that we're not continuing to sort of punt on making tough decisions between priorities. And so I'm a little concerned as we promise funding for so many different things in the future. I know Mayor Frey will work hard to find all of it in his proposed budget, and we'll work together to invest in it. But, at some point, we're going to need to start making those difficult decisions between trade-offs, especially if the economy slows down. The other thing I wanted to say is I've asked a lot of questions about Stable Homes, Stable Schools. Mayor, I'm glad you're here. I want to say that I enthusiastically support this program. I think it is doing very good work in the community. I do think we should put a little more pressure on the county that has a lot of unspent funds in rent stabilization dollars that I hope this would be a great way for them to get them out the door. I know they're working hard on that, and the commissioners there are committed to reforming their process to get those funds more available to our community. But it's a little frustrating to see the city putting millions of dollars into something while the county sits on millions of dollars for a similar use. So in the future, again, I hope we can really lean on our partners to invest as much as we are. And I will be supporting this with some trepidation about the way that we're setting ourselves up for next year's budget and future budgets.
Mayor Frey, and then Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I failed to give a few of the numbers that I'm very proud of that I wanted to make sure I relayed at the dais here. So this program is working really, really well. In fact, it's far surpassing any of the expectations that we had when it started. And it's really only been going full scale since about September, because that's when the school year started. And since then, we've got 579 children that have been enrolled. 579 children. And in terms of the families and the kids that have already been assisted, it's ended or preventing homelessness for 415 children in 137 families in just 6 months. I'm going to say that again. Ending or preventing homelessness for 415 children in 137 families in just 6 months. Those are the families that have already been helped, and there's even more families that are in the pipeline, so it looks like we're going to even surpass some of the goals that we've set for ourselves. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you to those that have served on the committee, including Councilmember Phillipe Cunningham, who's been a steadfast supporter of this, and Councilmember Jeremy Schrader. Thank you so much. Again, supportive of the amendment, and thank you for the commitment for next year as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Gordon?
I think hopefully, given what I said and have fought for last year for stable homes, stable schools, people realize that if I didn't think that climate change and our response to it wasn't critically important, I wouldn't have gone to this funding source, and in fact, that was one of the reasons. But I also wouldn't be using this funding source if I thought it would hurt the program implementation at all, because it's clear that it wouldn't, because those dollars would not have been spent next year anyway. I'm glad the mayor corrected the figure that there'll still be $3 million to work with next year, which will cover all their planned expenses. And I'm also committed to making sure that we replenish those funds in future years, and also that we continue to support our climate action plan to the same level. And actually, I think it will be really important that we increase the level of support for that in future years. I know that it's going to be tough making budget decisions moving forward, but I just wanted to be clear at this point, and for the public record, those are two things that I'm not unclear on at all, that I'll be fighting for and supporting in future budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. I just want to iterate that this decision is tough right now. Let alone next year. I mean, Stable Homes and Stable Schools is a program that helps young people and families stay in their homes so that they can do well in school, which we know is going to help address some of the inequities that we have been talking about throughout this term and certainly today. I will be supporting it, but just wanted to indicate that while there will be tough decisions in the future, this is a tough decision today.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else in queue or with their flags up, so I'm going to call a voice vote on this amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Next, we have a motion, item number 18, on aging support with multiple authors. Councilmembers Schrader, Johnson, Jenkins, and Reich are the authors of this next motion. I will turn it over to Councilmember Schrader to explain and make the actual motion.
Sure. Thank you very much, Chair Palmisano. I'm excited to bring this forward today with so much support from my colleagues. Proactive investment in our city's rapidly growing aging community is necessary. It's a critical time to be investing in aging services, and we should be doing more at this juncture, not less. Seniors are among our fastest growing demographics and one of the fastest growing homeless populations. Study after study has shown that seniors are healthier when they can live at home. I've heard from seniors and their caregivers in my ward that they love the city and want to stay in their home as long as possible. Things that prevent them from living at home can range from not having transportation to medical appointments to repairs in their home that they just can't do themselves, to isolation, which can exacerbate mental illness, to lack of exercise and mental stimulation. With the groups that provide for services to Minneapolis' aging community, and with a relatively small investment from us, this is immediate preventative health care and other supportive services that directly impact these issues and the current programs that are vastly oversubscribed. I really want to thank my co-authors on this for their support, and all the other advocates, all the seniors, all the families, and as well as all the caregivers who have told their personal stories about why this funding matters to everybody. I hope I can count on the council's support for this important issue. And now, Madam Chair, I'll go right through the motion, which is amending the 2020 Mayor's recommended budget in the general fund for the Neighborhood and Community Relations, City Coordinator, Community Planning, and Economic Development Departments on a one-time basis. It's increasing the expense budget in the general fund for the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department by $60,000 one time to increase the aging support services. Change item in a total of $140,000 one time in 2020. This also reducing the expense budget in the general fund from the City Coordinator Department on a one-time basis by $50,000. This reduction shall come from the Creative City Challenge change item. And reducing the expense budget in the general fund for the Community Planning and Economic Development Department on a one-time basis by $10,000. This reduction shall come from the homeowner rehab activity in the department. Now I move the item.
Thank you. Councilmember Schrader moves amendment number 18 that is before you. Councilmember Connell.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move forward a substitute motion on this for the redirection of the source of some of the funds.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm going to pass out the substitute motion language here to my colleagues. We've had substantial conversation about this over the last 48 hours or so. So I'll just go ahead and read it. And this is essentially the same all the way up into the piece of where it says where the resources would come from. So increasing the expense budget in the general fund for the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department by $60,000 in a one-time to increase the aging support services change item to a total of $140,000 in one time in 2020. Reducing the expense budget in the general fund for the Community Planning and Economic Development Department on a one-time basis by $60,000. This reduction shall be distributed as follows: $10,000 from the Homeowner Rehab Program, which is the same as the original motion. And the piece that's different here is the $50,000 coming from the Adult Placement Training and Retention, which actually gets refilled, and I'll go ahead and continue to read here, making the following one-time changes to the Mayor's recommended budget of Community Block Grant Funds and Community Planning and Economic Development, which is reducing the vacant and boarded building program by $50,000 and increasing the Adult Placement Training and Retention program by $50,000. So what we ended up doing was originally I had a different set of sources to ensure that we didn't cut the arts funding in our budget, and ended up, after several conversations, having the wonderful support and help of Councilmember Fletcher and his team to be able to identify other sources that most of the people on the dais could support. And so thanks to our budget staff and our CPA director, we were able to come up with a source of funding that would not hinder any programs dramatically, as opposed to, $50,000 cut to the Creative City Challenge would mean that that program would not be able to move forward next year. And staff did email us about that. So I'll take any questions and would like to make a motion to move this forward as well.
Councilmember Cano puts forward a substitute motion for amendment number 18. Councilmember Schrader.
Sure, I'd either accept that as a friendly amendment or I'd support this motion.
Okay, just because it's all spelled out here, if it's all right, I'm going to just have us do the substitute instead, and then we'll go back and we will also let the other authors speak because I see that they want to in the original queue. All those in favor of making this substitute motion, the substitute is actually for the source of funding for the aging seniors assistance, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The substitute carries. Then I will mentally move over. Yep, there we go. Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe this is moot at this point, but I had the opportunity throughout 2019 to visit 3 senior centers throughout the city: the Nokomis Healthy Seniors, the Park Avenue Senior Center on 14th and Park, as well as the Sabanthony Community Center, which is 2 of which are actually located in Ward 8. And so, but to see the camaraderie of the seniors that are that participate in that program, to understand the needed services such as transportation services, maintenance. I know that many of these senior centers help with snow removal for seniors that are impacted by age and disability. And so I believe, and one of the reasons why I am a staunch supporter of this amendment is that this, in fact, leads to and helps with our equity agenda that we have at the city in making sure, as well as our affordable housing issues, to make sure that seniors are able to stay in their homes and have safe and affordable options for staying in their homes. This program really facilitates volunteer coordinators and leverages volunteer efforts throughout the community to help our seniors. So it is really a small but very important investment in the support of one of the fastest growing segments of our population here in Minneapolis. Thank you.
Well said. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really want to thank Councilmember Schrader for his leadership on this, and also to note that beyond this motion today, that I've seen him really step up in a lot of different ways for the Healthy Seniors program in the community, and working really hard to support our seniors across our shared community as well. I also want to thank my co-authors on this, fellow co-authors, and also recognize Councilmember Gordon for all of his leadership on this issue throughout the past as well. I know he's really stepped up and worked hard on this too. I want to acknowledge that one of the reasons why we're looking at this today is because the county did cut funding for these programs. Thanks to Commissioner Connolly, they are doing a partial restoration, and she's fought really hard as well to get that. So I want to thank Commissioner Connolly for that work. I would really hope that going forward, and I know we organized a letter to this effect that so many of my colleagues signed on to, but really hope that the county can find ways to better support this moving forward and step up and really restore not only the full amount that was cut this year, but increase the amount overall. This is just a vital need throughout our city, and is only going to grow as a large segment of our population continues to age. And it is a high return on investment to be able to keep folks in their homes with a little bit of support so they can continue to live independently in the neighborhoods that they've so heavily invested in and really poured their hearts and souls into. So I'm glad we're doing this today and proud to be a co-author on it.
Thank you. Seeing no others in queue, I will call a voice vote on the amendment number 18 as amended. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The item carries. Next is item number 19, that is about city-sponsored initiatives with cultural communities. This motion will be, this amendment is authored, and the motion will be made by Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As an introduction to this amendment, the source for these funds is the existing cash balance in the NCR Special Revenue Fund, and the idea is to bring all of the cultural communities up to par and equal funding throughout the city enterprise to be able to invest in greater engagement with them. Over time, we have seen that the American Indian community has received about $50,000 since 2001 or so. The funding streams and structures have changed depending on the arrangements and votes that have happened on the council, but the money has remained steady, and the community has hosted things like the Indigenous Peoples Day Parade and other festivities that are with the community. So the idea was to resource all the cultural communities throughout the city that have the major standings in the language groups, which is usually an indicator that places like Minneapolis Public Schools and the city of Minneapolis also uses, to invest in these communities moving forward so that we can have resources to do things like Black Business Week, Latino Heritage Month, Dia de los Muertos, etc. And so I'll go ahead and read the motion and then stand for any questions. Amending the 2020 Mayor's recommended budget in the Neighborhood and Community Relations Special Revenue Fund for the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department on an ongoing basis. Increasing the expense budget in the Neighborhood and Community Relations Special Revenue Fund for the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department by $200,000 to support city-sponsored initiatives that strengthen engagement with the following cultural communities: the African American community, the Latinx community, the East African community, and the Southeast Asian community. Funds will be used to cover expenses related to the city's partnership with cultural communities to support one-time or annual cultural community or cultural commemorative events that strengthen the community's ability to gain more access to the city's wide array of programs, resources, information, and services. The Neighborhood and Community Relations Department will draft guidelines on the definition of a city-sponsored initiative, funding eligibility, spending parameters, and the process of input from community. The Neighborhood and Community Relations Department will report back to the Public Health, Environment, and Civil Rights and Engagement Committee by February 28, 2020, with a set of recommendations.
Thank you. Councilmember Cano moves amendment number 19. Does anybody else wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, all those in favor of amendment number 19, as explained by Councilmember Cano, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Next in your packets is item number 20 on council aid salaries. I am passing out a substitute which changes the source for that motion, and this amendment is being made by Council President Bender. I will turn it over to her for explanation and then moving the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to move this motion from myself and Councilmember Johnson. This is amending the 2020 Mayor's recommended budget in the general fund for the City Council, Assessor, and City Attorney departments on an ongoing basis, increasing the expense budget in the general fund for the City Council department by $260,000 and creating a new council staff salary schedule update change item. It reduces the expense budget in the general fund for the City Attorney Department on an ongoing basis by $100,000. This reduction shall come from the elimination of a vacant legal support specialist position, which is 1 FTE. It reduces the expense budget in the general fund for the Assessor's Department on an ongoing basis by $150,000, and this reduction shall come from the essential operating expenses change item named in this year's recommended budget. It directs staff from Human Resources to implement a salary schedule, which is included in the amendment itself. It's a little detailed to maybe describe verbally, but essentially it creates a percent increase between each of the steps, bringing the highest range for the 2 aid positions in our offices closer to parity with their counterparts in St. Paul and closer to parity with 2 administrative positions in the city of Minneapolis, still falling quite short actually of meeting parity with staff in the mayor's office. And it notes that all incumbents in job codes C02740 and C02755 shall maintain in their current step, and that future step progression dates will come upon implementation of the new schedule. So I'll maybe speak to this and happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you. Council President moves this item, and did you say you wanted to speak?
Yeah,
more
thank
to it?
you.
Go ahead.
So first I want to thank Councilmember Johnson. A number of council members brought this to my attention. Actually, Councilmember Cano first approached me to talk about this as she was working to support staff in her office. The Council Vice President has been very interested in this, and Councilmember Johnson helped really get us to a proposal. I know that we all appreciate so much the work that our staff does. I think the expectations from community about the role of council offices has evolved. And our 2 staff that each of us have in our offices, in addition to the council members, are doing an incredible array of work. Everything from answering questions to talking to people who are in crisis, to doing community engagement, policy research, proposing policy change, and so on. And actually, Council Vice President and I were in a meeting the other day where she asked, how does the city enterprise respond to a crisis in our communities? And I reflected on that in the meeting and actually said, honestly, often the response to a crisis comes from the city council office, along with the mayor's office. And we have invested more in different parts of our city, in the coordinator's office, in the Office of Race and Equity, receiving grants specific to community trauma. but our offices are still the front line for our communities. And so I think that our staff really deserve to be paid equitably. We also have greatly diversified our staff in recent years, and I think that council offices are a really incredible place for us to continue to build the leadership of people of color and women, two places that our city enterprise is falling short in terms of employment equity. And these are positions that give folks a pathway into public service. I think we've seen and will continue to see folks move on from our jobs into all different aspects of public life. So I think this will help invest in them and their leadership and their future in the city. I'll also note that in the future, I do think the City Council needs more support. Support in terms of policy research, support in terms of communications and other things. And I'd welcome any collaboration from all of you on that, thinking through, the last couple of years of this term, but particularly into the future. So thanks for everyone who's engaged in this. Again, happy to answer any questions, or finance is able as well. Just finally, we'll note that I really want to appreciate the City Attorney's Office and Interim City Attorney Nielsen for being so willing to collaborate on this. We were able to identify this position, which is becoming vacant after a retirement of a long-serving staff person, and is likely to be part of some reshuffling of how the City Attorney Office is providing their services and support. I committed my support to future staff investments that might be needed in the City Attorney's Office, and I did have a chance to talk to the assessor as well. There is an issue in the assessor's office in their budget, which we will need to continue to invest in the future. I think talking with finance and the interim city coordinator, we will be able to work with them for this coming year, and then look forward into the future with potential ongoing funds. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is amendment number 20. We're just going to take this as the one instead of the one that was in the packets. It is a motion by Council Members Bender and Johnson is added as an author. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really want to thank Council President Bender for her leadership on this, as well as my colleagues who have voiced support for this and proactively reached out long ago talking about really the need to fairly compensate our staff who, as Council President Bender noted, have increasingly taken on more and more work and have to have an increasingly diverse set of skills. And frankly, we would not be successful without them. We need them for us to be as successful as we are, and we owe our success in large measure to their work. And even after this adjustment, it's still worth noting for the public that even our senior staff will be paid thousands of dollars less than senior council aides just across the river in St. Paul are paid in that strong mayor system. But this does move us towards fair compensation for our staff, our very talented staff who do such great work. And in addition, it's also worth noting that that pool of our staff has been a pipeline for talent and leadership within our enterprise. My former senior policy aide is now our Congress person. I know one of my colleagues, her senior policy aide is now one of our state representatives. We've got department directors that have originated from these positions. And so it is a great opportunity, and it really speaks to, and I think that fact really speaks to the amount of work that they do and the talent that they have to bring to the table, and just how lucky we are to have them working on our behalf.
Thank you. Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that I was really pleased and thankful that the Council President carried out this work, which I know probably took a lot of time, and convening with internal staff members. It's so important for us to be able to offer competitive salaries because we are leading one of the largest cities in the country on some of the most pressing issues of the nation, and even doing international work through our sister cities and a host of other efforts that are new and innovative. And these positions have changed, the responsibilities of them have changed so much over time that it only makes sense that we properly compensate this to be able to compete for the talent that is needed to really serve our communities to the fullest extent. So thanks again to the author, and I'm obviously very happy to support this.
Thank you. Council President Bender has one small change she wants to make to this markup. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a typo. This has been through many iterations, particularly trying to avoid other folks' sources. So this should read $250,000 for the change item, and I just want to confirm with Finance how that affects the salary schedule that's listed here.
My understanding is it doesn't at all. Is that correct, Director Intermill?
Madam Chair, Council President, that's correct.
Thank you. So it truly is just the first paragraph that, with the one small typo. Councilmember Johnson, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I neglected to mention this before, but I know my colleagues were briefed by the clerk's office, and I just wanted to mention it for the public record that HR did undertake a study as well of comparative roles and positions both within the enterprise, locally and nationally as well. It's kind of difficult but, in general, and it speaks to that because there is such diversity among different positions, but we certainly believe that this is fair within that lens as well of the study that was undertaken.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in queue to speak, I will call a voice vote on this motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That item carries. Next, we have a staff direction by Councilmember Gordon related to the university neighborhood. And if I may, Councilmember Gordon, I see that you have a new one that you have just emailed to me. I assume you have copies for the clerk and for the public.
I did, and actually the change is so simple, I'll just read it into the record too.
Thank you.
I just wanted to change it for clarity because there's some confusion, because there's a university neighborhood and then there's also a university district alliance. So I'll read it as follows. It's changing twice where it says district to neighborhood. This is amending the 2020 mayor's recommended budget to recognize that the university neighborhood does not have a recognized neighborhood organization and likely will not have one for the year 2020, and to direct the Director of Neighborhood and Community Relations Department to identify the University District Alliance as the managing agent for the University Neighborhoods Community Participation 2020 allocation of $43,000. I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but I could speak to that.
Thank you. Councilmember Gordon moves this item and is going to speak to it.
Thank you. The university district has had a challenge. The university neighborhood, see I did it again. The university neighborhood has been identified on our city maps for decades and has always been challenged with creating an actual neighborhood organization because it's mostly fraternities and dormitories and transient residents, and to be a neighborhood organization it has to really be resident-centric. In the meantime, we created a University District Alliance that has representatives from all the surrounding neighborhood organizations, the University of Minnesota, and 3 city members sitting on that, along with representatives from the Undergraduate Student Association and the Graduate Student Association. And so these funds haven't been able to be utilized to help with lots of things that they could be if there was a neighborhood organization. So I want to just make it so that we will allow these, and the department will recognize we're allowing these to be utilized by the Alliance if they, as they manage them. Probably within the same parameters as the community participation program parameters, but as a unique entity. Hopefully that's clear.
I think that's clear enough. Does anybody want to speak? Does anybody else want to speak to this item? Seeing none, all those in favor in this motion by Councilmember Gordon, please signify by saying aye. 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 No. That item carries. Going back before we adjourn to items number 10 and 11 from Councilmember Warsame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did amend the items, both 10 and 11, thanks to our wonderful finance staff. And I can tell you the source of the funding, but let me read item number 10, or motion number 10, amending the mayor's 2020 recommended budget in the general fund for the health department on a one-time basis by increasing the health department's expense budget by $100,000 for public safety programming in the Office of Violence Prevention to be deployed for strategies to reduce crime in the following neighborhoods and at the following amounts: Ventura Village, 40,000, Phillips West, 40,000, with at least 15,000 supporting the Phillips West Safety Center, and Stevens Square, 20,000. The source of funding for this item is 100,000 of one-time general fund resources made available by adoption of Amendment 1, Item H, which addressed a relocation of net debt bonds from the Park and Recreation Board to the Police Department and reduced the general fund allocation to the Police Department by 200,000.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak to amendment number 10? Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you. I just want clarification that this is adding to the Violence Prevention Fund. Is that ultimately what it does? Okay.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
If I may. So the dollars are appropriated to the health department, specifically the Office of Violence Prevention, but they will not exactly be part of that general pool that we had talked about earlier and that Council President amended, saying that there were no geographic restrictions.
Okay.
So this would place geographic restrictions on these specific funds that will also be put through the Office of Violence Prevention.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Seeing nothing further, all those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Item number 11, Councilmember Warsame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the motion for item number 11 reads as amending the Mayor's 2020 recommended budget in the General Fund for the Community Planning and Economic Development Department on a one-time basis by increasing the department's expense budget by 50,000 one-time for the Cultural District Co-op and Employee Owner Opportunity Fund for a total of 150,000 one-time for that change item. The additional 50,000 added through this amendment shall be deployed specifically in conjunction with the Cooperative Public Market for the Africa Village project in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood. The source of the funding for this item is 100,000 of one-time general fund resources made available by adoption of Amendment 1, Item H, which addressed a relocation of net debt bonds from the Park and Recreation Board to the Police Department and reduced the general fund allocation to the Police Department by 200,000.
Madam Chair and Councilmember Warsame, I would recommend in the source of funding for this item be 50,000 of one-time general fund resources.
Okay. And if we can add the words, Casey, in conjunction with a cooperative public market for the Africa Village project. More descriptive.
Thank you. So can you just one more time read it into the record the way that you want it to read? That way we don't have to retype it.
Amending the Mayor's 2020 recommended budget for the General Fund for the Community Planning and Economic Development Department on a one-time basis by increasing the department's expense budget by 50,000 one-time for the Cultural District's Co-op and Employee Owner Opportunity Fund for a total of 150,000 one-time for that change item. The additional 50,000 added through this amendment shall be deployed specifically in conjunction with the Cooperative Public Market for the Africa Village project in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood. The source of funding for this item is 50,000 of one-time general fund resources made available by adoption of Amendment 1, Item H, which addressed a relocation of net debt bonds from the Park and Recreation Board to the Police Department and reduced general fund allocation to the Police Department by $200,000.
Thank you. And I'll note that I know you meant reallocation of net debt bonds, not relocation of them, reallocating it.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
That's great. Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move a substitute motion in here to change the words Cultural Districts Co-op and Employee Owner Opportunity Fund to the simple words Cooperative Technical Assistance Program, CTAP, which is an existing vehicle within the Department of Economic Development that can easily be used to deploy the resources without getting hung up in the cultural districts dilemma.
Councilmember Cano moves a substitute wording to change what currently is in line 3, Cultural Districts Co-op and Employee-Owned Opportunity Fund, to CTAP, an existing program in CPED. Councilmember Cano has just emailed this to us, and I presume she will have copies available for the clerk momentarily.
Yep.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would encourage my colleagues to support the amendment offered by Councilmember Cano. We have not designated cultural districts. I think this clears up the language situation, and certainly, I would be amenable to adding resources to the cultural district fund. However, I think it needs to be broadly distributed throughout the cultural districts once they have been determined and identified.
Thank you. My understanding from the author is that this is a friendly amendment. For clarification purposes, I just want to call on him to invite him to say anything different.
Yep, I thank Councilmember Cano for her effort, as well as Council Vice President Jenkins. So thank you to both.
Thank you. Councilmember Reich, did you want to weigh in?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to extend Councilmember Cano's notion that this is an appropriate vehicle and a solid vehicle, and having worked on this particular area, this is a welcome addition to their portfolio.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else in queue on Councilmember Cano's amendment to item number 11, I'm going to call a voice vote on that amendment part of it. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. No? None for no. That carries. Now we are back to item number 11, the full motion. Seeing nobody else in queue to speak to this motion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Nay? That also carries. This completes. I'm looking at my colleagues to see if there are any further ones at this time before I move it back to the council as amended. Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to note, and I communicated this with you, but just for the public, that Councilmember Cunningham and I are working on a staff direction related to traffic enforcement. We had hoped to have that ready for today, but there was actually quite a lot of discussion with Chief Arredondo, Director Hutchison, and other city staff. We want to make sure that Chair Reich is fully included because of his leadership with the overall Vision Zero work of which this is a small part. So I'd like to commit to try to get something out to you all and to the public on Monday, if we can, or for sure before, well before the public hearing on Wednesday. I think it will be, non-controversial and reflect a lot of what I've heard from council members and the public about this work, but I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I just want to appreciate all of my colleagues here for being so very forthcoming, to the mayor and the mayor's office for staying in close collaboration with us as we go through some pretty big budget changes to this year's budget. So I will move to approve the entire mayor's 2020 recommended budget as amended today by the Budget Committee, and to refer that amended budget proposal to the adjourned meeting of City Council scheduled for Wednesday, December 11th, 2019 at 6:05 p.m. for further consideration. Anybody want to speak to that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. No or nay? That carries. Thank you for your time. That completes our agenda today, and we are adjourned.